Hey everyone, welcome to the Team House. This is episode 66. I'm Jack Murphy, here with co-host Dave Park. Here's my disembodied hand behind his head. We are here with our guest tonight, Brian Kimber. Most of you know him as BK. He is the host of, I'm going to bolo it, World News with BK.
World News with BK, yep.
Mm-hmm. And there's a link down in the description to his podcast and also to his Patreon site if you want to check it out. We'll get into it and have Brian describe it, but Brian does a weekly news show. It's pretty cool. So hope you guys will check it out. And Brian, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for coming on and spending some time with us tonight.
Yeah, Jack, thanks very much for having me. Dave, finally meeting him for the first time, so it's great. And this is really, I don't really get to go on too many I've never really gone on anybody else's show. So
really?
This is like a first for me too, yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Well, welcome, man. I hope you have a drink because we have several here.
Yeah, I poured a little bourbon into my coffee here.
Okay. So, Brian, usually the first question we ask our guests is about their origin story and kind of like where they came from, how they found their way into the military.
Sure. So I'll get started with that. I went in a little older. I was living in Los Angeles and Hollywood, actually. I was a salesman, young salesman, slaying out there and kicking some ass. And my older brother was an infantry officer in the Marine Corps. And I have a second brother who's also an officer in the Marine Corps. But, 9/11 kind of happened. And then, it's kind of that stereotypical thing. 9/11 happened. I started, my brother's getting ready to gear up to go to war. And I was like, well, I feel like I, need to do something. Felt like just kind of a turd just sitting there. So I started looking around at jobs. And I was always attracted, as what male kid isn't attracted to military high speed stuff. And I started looking around and I actually contacted a couple different recruiters. I contacted the Navy recruiter because I was much closer to where I was in LA, Los Angeles. But the Air Force recruiter was like just all about it. And the SEAL recruiter was like, really like flaky with me. So I didn't really know a lot about what I was getting into. At the time, there was a few things that you could look up. The guy I always think of, and you guys know Frumentarius, our good buddy who used to write with SoftRep with us. But
yeah, he's been on the show. Jeff.
Yeah, and Stu Smith's workout program was out there, the Navy SEAL workout program, and Frumentarius I know did that like straight through, and that's how he got through. And there was a lot of stuff. That was about it though. There was nothing like it is now, and this isn't ancient history or anything. This is, less than 20 years ago, but it's changed a lot. Mm-hmm. So I really didn't know what I was getting into. I was like, okay, well, there's some PT involved, and then I went in. Again, I was a little bit older. I was like 28, and so kind of an old man.
Yeah.
I went through selection with some guys who'd already been to combat, some, prior Rangers, especially in our team. And that was really good for me, seeing them. And just because I was older, I was with them in like kind of a, class leadership position, but it was an ass kicker. This was the old selection course. It was called the indoctrination course. And it was a 10-week, it was similar to Bud's, setup. It was just basically a 10-week, just all out, just kill you every day and see who survived. You had a PT test every Monday. You had a water confidence test every Friday. And if you were a no-go at any one event 2 weeks in a row, you got rolled back. And it was survival of the fittest for sure. It was tough. It was definitely the hardest thing I've ever done, probably will ever do in my life. So luckily I was able to get through it. I did get hurt at the very end, so they rolled me into the second class immediately. So I got no days off. So I actually did, instead of 10 weeks, I did like 14 weeks of indoc straight through. And then finally they pulled me aside. They're like, hey, you think you can pass that final eval PT test? Because I'd injured myself trying to do it the first time. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And I beat it, and then I was able to graduate. So I was really happy about that.
Right. How did you find out about Pararescue? I'm sorry. How did you, a lot of people don't know about Pararescue, about PJs. How did you find out about it?
Well, so I was a big, I've always been a big reader, and I had read quite a bit. I've always been a lover of books, and I read The Perfect Storm a long time ago. I thought that was, and the way Sebastian Junger really described these guys as the elite of the elite. That's where I wanted to be, and that's kind of where I heard about it. And so when the first thing that came to my thought was when I wanted to join like an elite military unit, I was like, well, I'll join Navy or Army, and then I started Googling around, and I came upon Air Force Pararescue and kind of remembered reading about them in the past. And then it kind of just went from there. Again, I really didn't know what I was getting into, I don't think.
Interesting.
But yeah, that was and it's funny now because that whole selection process, as I was telling Jack earlier, has changed completely. That old NDOC course that I went through no longer exists. They went to a assessment and selection model similar to what the Rangers did when they moved from, RIP to RASP. It's much more of that. So in the old days in Pararescue, if you were a physical stud, but you're an asshole, you could go right through and you're good to go. Your ticket to the pipeline was graduating this course, and they really didn't look at a lot of stuff like if you were an a-hole or not. Now with this assessment and selection model, just like the Green Berets, Jack, there's no guarantee you could be a total stud. And I've heard reports because I got a lot of young guys who listen who go through and keep me updated, and they're like, yeah, we've had dudes who crushed everything and they were not selected.
Yeah.
So it's no longer a guarantee at all. They have some kind of crazy algorithm that they base this shit on. I don't know how they do it.
There's probably also peer evaluations and things like that. And what Brian's saying is true. In Special Forces selection, Delta selection, I think it's the same with the SEALs. That you can crush the selection course, make it all the way through, but if you're not a team player, you just cannot get along with the other dudes on the team. That you're a spotlighter, that you're one of those guys who it's all about you and you don't give a fuck about the dude to your left and right, you will be a non-select, even if you passed all the events.
Yeah, and it's weird. I've heard reports of guys saying, they don't know the rhyme or reason behind it. They said they've had, and now especially it's very hard for prior service guys to get really picked up is what I'm hearing. So I've heard reports of guys who are 5, 6, 7 years Army infantry who are total studs, and they nailed everything, and they were great teammates, and they don't get selected, but the 19-year-old guy kind of does get selected. So I don't know what they're doing. But from what I hear, it's very tough still. The traditional 80% washout rate is still kind of maintained from the old NDOC days. That really hasn't changed that much. They have had a few females attempt to go through, none yet so far.
Brian, you can be honest with us. You went through the last hard selection, didn't you?
Yeah, of course. Fucking A, dude. Yeah, it was cool. I was really happy. It was one of the proudest moments of my life, actually, getting through that and just to be able to go on to the rest of it. And then after that, just kind of that's your ticket to ride the pipeline. From there I went to Key West, Florida. I went to the Army's combat diver course. I was very also honored to graduate from that. Another very, very, very tough course. Not much more difficult than the selection course, that's for sure. That was an ass kicker of a course. And I liked going there because that was really my first taste of really getting being around these Army NCOs who'd been in the military for a while, and I'm just like this dude. I don't know a lot about big military operations, and being around these E7s and shit who'd been in Ranger Battalion for 10 years or whatever. That was really good for me to be around those guys. Looked up to them a lot, and then just kept going. And it was Army Airborne School. That was that's big Army all the way. That was a fucking experience, of course. Yeah. And then I was happy to go. I'm glad I got to go to the Army's Halo course too, because the alternate, they actually had so many PJs they were trying to push through. They started sending half of them to the Navy SEAL Halo course, and the rest of us went to the Army one. And I'm glad I went to the Army one because that's by far the better course. Not even a question in my mind. I knew PJs who graduated from the SEAL Halo school who never even did a ramp exit, as a group. And, in the Army, infamously, you have to do those wall locker jumps where you throw on everything and you pile out of the back of the C-130 at night with 8 other guys. And, and maybe they've changed it since. I hope they have. But in the Navy one, it was all side door exits. So you never did a group exit or anything. And it was very weird to me that they would do that, because that's not something you would ever do in real life. You're never going to go out a side door. But it was a great time. It was a lot of work. graduated, got through every school first time after that, luckily, paramedic and all that stuff. And it took me 2.5 years. It was a lot of work. And, then when you know how it is, man, you graduate and then you go to a team and you start from day one.
Yeah. So you're saying 2.5 years just to become a PJ. Can you tell us about the medical training? Because first off, can you tell us what a PJ or a pararescue jumper is?
Sure. So, it's interesting. It's a lot of history. They first started figuring out during World War II that they needed some kind of air rescue component. That's where they first started looking around and saying hey, this would be a good thing to have. And then really though, post World War II is when it actually started. So it was officially established on 29 May of 1946. And that's when the Army Air Force, it was still the Army Air Force at the time, established what they call the Air Rescue Service. And you'll still see some of those old-timer patches around, the ARS. And that's who started, they were basically tasked with, saving lives of air crews who are going down. And then the first one, the real considered the birth of pararescue, if you will, was when this doctor, a captain, his name was Pope Holiday, and he jumped out of a Catalina airplane into the Nicaraguan jungle to aid a crew member who'd parachuted from a B-17 Flying Fortress. So he got a Bronze Star for that. And that kind of really made them realize, wow, this is a capability that we really need to have. And at the time, anti-aircraft stuff was much more of a concern than it is now. And then Vietnam was really the golden age. And that's when, dudes were just winning all these crazy medals because they were just dropping in the jungles and getting it on with the Marines and the Army guys and, friggin' hunting, clearing the jungle for Charlie and all that stuff. And that was a crazy time. And you had guys who were on Dwayne Hackney, pararescue legend. He was a Sante Raider. PJs were on that as well.
Wow.
And then, so now it's really kind of evolved to what it is now. I mean, it's not because the old days, the old mission was rescuing these aircrew and pilots. Well, that's hardly a concern in the 21st century. And, even big Air Force is smart enough to realize that. So now the mission's evolved a lot. These young PJs, man, they're really on the tip of the spear. They're getting, especially at these special tactics units, they're farming these guys out to all these ODAs over in theater. And Jack, you and I have joked about this before, but it's almost like Afghanistan has become this proving ground. It's like, why are we there? It's completely pointless. And I've always joked, well, this is like Predator. When the Predators come to Earth in the movie, to hunt humans. That Afghanistan is like our proving ground for our special operations forces. That's really the only fucking reason I can even see we're even in there. But these young guys, man, they're getting attached to these ODAs and these SF teams and these and they're just going out and just getting it on. We just had 2 guys win a couple Bronze Stars with Valors for just some close encounter grenade fighting. I mean, it's just unbelievable what they're doing now. So the mission is really expanding. I don't know what the future is exactly. Maybe there won't be a pararescue, or maybe they'll call it something else. I'm not exactly sure.
Well, dude, the next war we go into, we may not have air superiority or total control over the airspace. So that
we might not have pilots.
That too. That's true.
It's crazy the way things are evolving. We might have drone swarms. It's crazy what's going on now. So it's a lot different.
It's interesting. So you're kind of saying that Afghanistan has become the final FTX, the final field training exercise of training.
100%. Why? That's really the only logical reason I can even see to even still be there. If you ask me, if they brought that up, if they were honest with us and said, well, hey, we're going to use it as a proving ground, I'd be like, okay, that makes sense. But Everything else, we're 19 friggin' years into it. Me and Jack have gone back and forth with this for years on the old soft rep days. Just what are we doing? What's the mission? What's the goal?
Now
what's the point?
Feminism.
Yeah, are we going to win? I don't even know. What's the point anymore?
Yeah,
and nobody knows what the point is, and everybody knows that there is no point.
Nobody knows what it means to win. How do you define that?
I know. I always want to ask these. I want to corner these generals. If I was a reporter, I would be describe the mission in Afghanistan in 2 or 3 sentences. Mm-hmm. And just watch them stumble and fucking fumble around for words because nobody knows.
Yeah,
and really, the travesty of that is the young Marine or soldier or whoever on the ground, what's going through his head when he has to think, why am I here? What am I doing?
Right. And Jack, and I know when you're like a young trooper, all you care about is the guy to your left and right. It's all about the brotherhood, and you're fighting for the guy to your left and right. And you don't think about these foreign policy and these higher foreign policy implications, but that's a job left up to others. Mm-hmm. But you have to start after a while. I mean, we've been there. It's 20 friggin' years, guys. It's not gonna fucking change. So
right. Yeah. It's interesting. So when I was in Ranger Battalion, things were a little bit different because I guess all SEALs go to Halo now. Right? Is that? Mm-hmm. So back in the day, that didn't happen. Halo was still a very specific thing, and everybody was very envious of Pararescue and CCT because you guys had the whole pipeline handed to you, where guys would have to go to SF or a specialized team on SF. A Halo team or a scuba team, or they'd have to be in RRD to get Halo and scuba. All these different things. But when you were in, did a lot of people that you worked with already have those schools, or were they all jealous of you?
No. So it was different. It was, they used to make fun of Pararescue for that, call them like baby commandos and stuff like that, because you were taking these 18, 19-year-old kids and pushing them through. And it was funny though, because as they used to make fun of us, every other branch of the service started doing that exact same thing. Yeah. Because why would you fucking take a young motivated guy, 18 years old, and send him to go be a goddamn cook or something for 4 years just because that's the rule before he can try out for SF? I mean, it's absurd, right? So what, he has 4 years to go off and learn like bad habits in big army? I mean, it sounds dumb when you think about it today, right? Why not take that guy from a young age and mold him? And we're doing that and more now. Like I said, there's like now they have these formalized government training programs. I have a few friends who are actually contractors on them. I mean, they're identifying these kids at 12, 13, 14 years old, high school kids, and bringing them out and doing PT with them and stuff like that, and really getting after it at a young age. And that's what you should be doing. You should be installing that mindset, I think, like right off the bat. So I never did see the sense of why would you wait and make a guy go do something he doesn't want to do. Navy did the same thing, right? You used to have to go into the fleet for a while or whatever before you could go be a SEAL. Like, why? So, but yeah, they did, and it was unusual, and that's why I ended up going through these schools with like a lot of like prior service dudes who'd been in the military for a long time, especially Halo and dive. You had like E8s, right? Going through dive school with me. Some of them were failing out. I was like, fuck, man, that guy fails out. And some locked on senior NCOs too. They were no mercy at those schools, man, especially the Army ones. Very by the book. If you didn't if you didn't check that task, sorry. Thank you for your fucking silver star with Oakley cluster, and but you failed. You're out.
And so, what was your medical training like? Because that's the bulk of what a PJ does.
Yeah, so that's another interesting thing. So what they used to do, this was again a manning issue, because they used to send PJs to the Army SOCM course, the Special Operations Combat Medicine course, where they train the 18 Deltas. And that's what PJs used to go through, and then it came again an issue of slots. There were never enough slots. So the Air Force looks at this, and this is the same reason the Air Force ended up making their own dive school, same reason that the Marines ended up making their own Halo school. They're looking at these slots, like we have too many guys, we don't have enough slots, so we're just going to have our own combat medicine course. And so the Air Force basically kind of almost copied it verbatim, the SOCM class and how it went down, and they just transferred it to the Air Force. One nice thing they did do, unlike SOCM, and maybe SOCM has changed on this since, I don't know, but the Air Force made sure that we were also hitting the National Registry paramedic requirements. So by the time you finished the course, not only were you you had all the dirt medicine and stuff, and you did all the high speed shit, but you also checked the boxes for National Registry in the Department of Transportation. So you'd graduate, and you'd also have you'd have this National Registry paramedic card, which is nice because you could get out. That had some weight in the civilian medicine world, but that was good too. I mean, that was definitely a fire hose. Again, that course was like I think it was like 7.5 months, and that included, so it was Monday through Friday, 8 hours a day of medicine. And then at the end, you did your 7 weeks of rotations, and they shipped guys around the country to various fire departments. Our class went to Tucson, Arizona, and I did ride-alongs with the fire department, and it was a bitch. Like, so we would do like a 24-hour with the fire department. You'd go home, crash for a few hours, and then you go work a 12-hour in the hospital emergency room. And you were bouncing around. And at the end of every shift, you had to sit there and write your run reports, and you had to turn them into the proctors, your instructors, and you had to like document everything. You did all the paperwork. You're like 26-year-old male complaining of blah 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 blah, and you had to go home, and you're ass tired because you've been up all night. But you had to like sit there and bang out all these run reports and soap notes and all this other stuff, and it was a lot of work. And plus, you're also working with civilians too, which is challenging. If you're in a civilian ER with a bunch of leg doctors and nurses, and you're like, full of piss and vinegar, you're just like, what are you, fucking dumb? Give me that thing, So you had to have some wherewithal there and kind of bite your tongue a little bit. But I had very good proctors, and the Tucson Fire Department guys I can't say enough about them. I mean, their civilian medicine was so good because they do this stuff every day. These guys, they're so good with the civilian medicine. So I learned a lot from them.
Did you have the opportunity to work on, some like gnarly gunshot wounds and stab wounds and stuff? Because the idea is they want you to see the sort of stuff that you may see in combat, right?
I did. I got a few gunshot wounds in the ER. They used to call it, the ghetto ambulance would show up. That's like, the Vatos would pull up at the ER and dump their homeboy out on the... Take their homeboy out onto the ER door and then speed off, It's like, hey, guys, we have a camera on the ER door. I don't know if you know this or not. But yeah, so they would drop. So I got a few gunshot wounds. I got a few, like, car accidents, but almost all of it, and this is why I could never be a civilian paramedic, almost all of it was, like, sick call, overdose stuff, old people.
Transport.
Yeah. But they were pretty cool. Like, so, and my first intubation ever was like, they sent us to one of these, like nursing homes. So like, where the fire department is running in and out every day because these old people are just like keeling over left and right. But the guy on the floor, it was like one of my first days, and the guy was on the floor, down and out, huge fat dude, pretty dead, right? But my proctor was cool. He's like, hey, go ahead and fucking intubate that guy. And I was like, okay. So, I went ahead and, did got an intubation on him and stuff like that. You could really see how challenging something like that is, especially for a guy with a big fat neck, lard ass. It's tough to intubate somebody who's very fat. So, like, that was my first experience with that. So I got a lot of good, but I got as good experience as you could get. And I got really good at, like, it's the little stuff with paramedicine. It's that muscle memory. It's hooking up the 12 lead. It's hooking up the oxygen. It's hooking up, checking vitals. And you're just going through all this in your head over and over again and just thinking the whole time. And it really makes you think, like, what am I missing? What am I missing? It's a challenge.
So you were in and going through this near the beginning of the war. Was trauma medicine changing while you were in the course?
Oh, 100%. 100%. Like, they were doing... Just one example I can think of, in the old days, it was like, you had a trauma patient, right? Guy shot. He's bleeding out. What's the course of action? You fucking throw the biggest needles you can into his elbows, and you do fucking full bore IV fluid, water. You fucking give him water.
Yeah.
And that was like, and then they were like, holy shit, we just destroyed every clot that this guy had, and we just killed him. So, so that's just one small example. I mean, the tech, and then the technology changed a lot too. You had Quick Clot come along. Remember the powder? Remember the old powder that you would shake all over the fucking place? Yeah, which works great. I mean, if you remember the old powder, it friggin' works.
Yeah.
But they figured out, like, hey, maybe like having this powder with the helicopter rotors going all over in everybody's eyes that burns isn't the best idea.
Right.
So stuff like that, and obviously, of course, going back to the two large bore IVs.
Yeah.
They figured out quickly you're blowing clots. So they started switching to, like, get the IV in, but keep the fluids to a minimum, if any at all. Barely keep the vein open. So that's just one example. And then there was the whole thing about, like, well, can we carry cow's blood? Do we do buddy transfusions, which is something I long advocated for? I mean, I don't know. The military is terrified of buddy transfusions in the military. I've never really figured out why. It's not a hard procedure at all, but they are freaked out by it. So they're always like trying to carry. They wanted us to carry like platelets and cow's bloods and all this other shit.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why don't you just, if you know, like, I mean, if you're like a platoon medic and you know everybody's blood type, or if they have their blood type written, which most guys do, you know, you get the A positive guy and you stick a hole in him and take some blood out, and then you get the other A positive guy and stick a hole in him and put the other guy's blood into him. It's not complicated.
Yeah.
And it's by far the best. It's the walking blood bank, what they call that. But the Army is very, very reluctant to really embrace that at a high level. There's
the last couple of years, they finally started carrying like some sort of like, I know I'm not saying the right thing, but like freeze-dried blood, right?
Right, yeah, like that. Again, it's all second best to the warm, fresh blood that you can get out of somebody else, and which is also very easy to do. Again, it's not a complicated procedure.
Perfect Halloween episode where we got BK talking about the warm, fresh blood.
I love it, baby.
Well, tourniquet procedure changed while you were going through training too, right? Or around that time?
Yeah, that did too. You know, tourniquets were, you know, that was another thing that was considered very scary for many years.
Yeah.
And again, they had success with tourniquets in a hospital setting, you know, during the surgical setting. But there was this belief that tourniquets caused, you know, limb damage really badly, and then that came out that was all nonsense. And you know, why are you going to worry about limb damage if the guy's going to bleed out? You know, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. I mean, fucking, I'd rather save the guy's life and have him lose a limb than have the guy die and be like, well, at least I didn't blow his limb. You know, it didn't make any sense. And then all the different kinds of tourniquets kind of came about. I know you guys know all about that. The NATO tourniquet. There's the twist.
We had the ratchet tourniquet when I first got the Ranger Battalion, and I'm talking about like the ratchet straps on your pickup truck kind of deal.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, I mean anything will work if you tighten it enough. So, but yeah, a lot of it did change, man, for sure. And then pain management was another thing that changed a lot. You know, with the ketamine, new drugs came in. Ketamine was, you know, really superior to morphine, but it was a lot more expensive, and it was there was a lot more potential for abuse of ketamine, if you know what I mean, because it came in like this multi-dose vial, and you could be like, okay, one for the patient, a little one for me right here, one for the patient, a little one for me.
Or you could just very good. Dry it out, stick it in your bullet, and carry it in your pocket.
I gotta know how this shit feels. You know what I'm saying? As it would be irresponsible for me to not test my own painkiller.
I think the fentanyl lollipop was really the beginning of that.
Phenomenal.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, phenomenal. Again, also tremendously abused.
Yeah.
like the fentanyl lollipop is like, oh yeah, you know, you could just easily be like, oh yeah, the wrapper fell off. I'll just go ahead and take that.
And that
for myself.
That's not slang. It was a literal lollipop.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you duct tape it. It was great. You duct tape it. You know, the standard our SOP was just duct tape it to the dude's hand. Be like, hey, suck on this, and he'd pass out, and he'd kind of be like, you know, like out of it and like slump over, and it would. And if he woke up, he would just take it and suck on it again, and so it was great. Very easy to do. But you know, again, the old days it was like all morphine. Which, again, if you have a guy with like low blood pressure who's already fucking bottoming out, the last thing you want to do is give him a drug, a narcotic that's going to drop his blood pressure even more and have him die. Now, the upside of morphine is, one, it works great. It's a great drug, and it's very cheap. So they really, there's definitely a place for it, and it's highly addictive, of course, as well.
It is a great drug.
Oh, it's a great drug.
Yeah. You hit with morphine and like instantly,
I remember.
I'm absolutely, almost, probably second to last person who would ever fuck around with any of that kind of stuff or pharmaceuticals or any of that kind of stuff. But yeah, I had a couple times where medics handed me the fentanyl lollipop, like, hey, Murphy, try this. You know, you're out at the fire pit, around the fire. I'm like, okay, it's a lollipop. And you put it in your mouth, and the next thing you know, literally like this is an impression of me in 2009.
Yeah. Drugs are great. No doubt about it. They work. Drugs are great.
Yeah. So you finished up your training, and was that in Fort Sam?
No, so so I bumped it. So you bump around. The selection course was at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, which is also where the Air Force basic training is. It's like they have this little annex across the street, basically, and that's where all the special warfare guys were going. And you left there, and you'd go to, and then you'd start going around. In between schools, you would hang out at Kirtland Air Force Base. That was like kind of the home of Pararescue, and it still is. And they now have this incredible complex there. I've never they were building it while I was going through school, and now it's obviously been done for a while. But it's a great structure. They have this huge climbing walls. The gym is amazing. I mean, the money that's gone in, it's all that global war on terror money. I mean, the gyms are phenomenal. I mean, these gyms at the teams are like, I can't even get over them anymore. The Olympic weights, the rogue equipment, top to bottom, the hardwood floors, the green feet on it. I mean, it's fucking badass. But yeah, you go to Kirtland in between schools, and then the last school you go to was called the apprentice course. And this is where the last school before you graduated, and this is kind of where they would put it all together. You would do full mission profiles, you would do your tactics, you would do your weapons training, a lot of mountaineering, you do a lot of airborne operations, water operations. You go out to Nellis Air Force Base, and we spent like 3 weeks in Vegas as students, which was a fucking shit show. Because you're drinking every night, and then trying to like hold your breath when you're like getting checked out by the instructors for like jump ops the next day because you like reeked of booze still. So half the time we were still half drunk from being out on the strip. They gave us a school bus, to drive the class around in. So there's fucking complete debauchery on that school bus on the Sunset Strip of Vegas. But we'd go out to Lake Mead, fly out of Nellis to Lake Mead. We were out there for like 3 weeks doing like just airborne operations, water operations, jumping into the water, doing, the Zodiac stuff, pushing those out of planes and all that stuff. And then finally you graduate, and, it's crazy because it's so long. It just doesn't seem like real. You're like, fuck, man, this has been like a long road. And you finally graduate, and I know for a lot of guys, it's probably the proudest moment of their life. Your peers are there. They make it very formal. They're like, don your beret, blouse your boots, and the whole thing. And it's really cool. And then you're now fucking a boot PJ, and you go to the team, and that's the way they treat you, kind of. And you start from the bottom, and you start just knocking out tasks, and it's always just upgrade training. I mean, they got a fucking binder that's that thick that you got to get signed off on just all these tasks, right? And I remember it was funny. I don't know if you guys remember, like a couple of years ago, there was this huge scandal when they found out like the SEALs had not like done any documentation of like parachute operations, and they were just like pencil whipping guys. I can't speak for the Navy or what happened. The fucking Air Force were Nazis about that, dude. You had to do a night combat equipment jump static line. You had to do a night combat equipment jump halo. You had to do a daytime water jumps. All this shit, and they documented it. And you would get a call at night, be like, "Hey, this is Sergeant So and So. You're fucking behind on this shit. You need to knock out like 3 night halo equipment jumps. So fucking get ready for tomorrow." And you're like, fuck." So like they were very strict about it, but it was good because it forced you to really, be good. And it was impossible to like keep up on all these tasks. I didn't try to be. I never even pretended to be good at everything. I just tried to be competent at stuff. My goal was to be really good at like 1 or 2 things, and then the rest just not be dangerous. Because that's really all you can do. There's just so much. There's just between the medicine, between the weapons, and the airborne operations alone, it's just a lot.
Yeah, I mean, all those different tasks, you got to maintain all the dive gear, the parachutes, all your medical gear, and to stay proficient on all of these different skills at the same time. I mean, did they kind of like free you up from a lot of the administrative bullshit so that you could focus on your core tasks, or was it really difficult to balance all of that?
I would say as a young airman, they did. Basically, my only job was to PT and to fucking train. And, you still had your big military stuff, your computer-based training. You had to do your, I will not sex traffic stuff, stuff like that. war crimes, law of armed conflict.
I will not beat my wife.
Can't get away
I will not kill myself.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But other than that, I would say they did a pretty good job. I was kind of free to like just train as hard as I could. There's a tremendous peer pressure to be physically in shape. Tremendous peer pressure. Like we PT'd on our own. We didn't have everybody get in fucking formation. We're going for a run. That did happen occasionally. Don't get me wrong. And it was always like at the end of the day when the a-hole fucking senior NCOs like, all right guys, we're going for we'll just go for a fun run, And then 8 miles later, 7-minute mile pace, you're just like, oh god, I hate you so much. So that did happen, but for the most part, it was PT on your own every morning. But if you weren't, my boss was he was a pretty well-known PJ. He was on the Jessica Lynch mission. He got some notoriety from that. And, he was a hard ass dude, and he would be like, "Hey, I didn't see you at the gym this morning. What's up?" I'm like, I'd be like, "Yeah, senior. I was there. I must have been in the bathroom when you were there, but I was there. I promise." And I was like, "Fuck, I was sleeping 10 minutes ago." So. But there was a lot of pressure, and if you weren't performing, you would stand out. There was a tremendous peer pressure to be fucking jacked, and you not only had to look good, you had to perform good.
Yeah. Do you think that's because PJs don't operate really as a team, but they're generally like strap hangers, right? They're generally assigned.
I think Dave, I think that had a huge deal to do it, because the way I read it. Because if I showed up to a different unit, I was often the only Air Force guy there, and I was lucky enough when I was in Afghanistan to be attached to an ODA for a little while. But the way I looked at it is I'm representing the entire Air Force. I'm representing the Air Force Special Tactics community. I want to show up here and fucking look like I know what I'm talking about, look fucking jacked. Mm-hmm. Even if I don't know what the hell I'm doing, which was often the case, especially you go out with these ODAs, these guys have been in country for 6 months, and you're strap hanging on as the new guy, but you want to project an air of confidence. And the best way to do that for these young guys, for all you young guys listening, if you're going to show up to a new unit, the best way to make a good impression is you show up, your fucking PT better be locked on. Mm-hmm. Fucking look good. It sounds cheesy a little bit, but have the fucking grooming standards squared away. If you're rocking the beard, fine, have it trimmed, look cool. Obviously. I'm telling you, it sounds silly saying it out loud, but I can't overstate how much this matters, especially when you're going to be with these new units and be around these new guys. Because at the very minimum, they'll know you're like a young Air Force dude, but they'll also be like, well, he's a fucking stud at the end of the day, and that's what you want.
And it's not just how you look. The Air Force gets razzed.
Maybe in NSW it is.
Yeah, for being notoriously soft. And so as a PJ or a CCT, but as a PJ, you show up, you can't fall out or slow the team down on a 10K infill, or you've got to be spot on, right?
Yeah, 100%. I've had good friends of mine who I talked to who, were lucky enough to do 6-7 month deployments with some of the ODAs in Afghanistan. And that's a very common thing now, not so much when I was, but it's very common now. But they'll tell you, they're like, yo, you're going to show up to these guys and they've already been in country maybe for a few weeks, a few months. So you got to be ready to go. And I had a friend who, this dude's PT was fucking solid, just an absolute stud. And he told me, he showed up to the ODA in Afghanistan, and these guys were already doing these humps up the mountains, and with 80 pounds, and he's like, dude, it doesn't matter how in shape you think you are, you're gonna get broke off big time. Yeah. Especially humping up those mountains at altitude with weight. Yeah. It's no joke. And some of those fat bodies in the Army, don't let looks deceive you. If some of those fucking dudes can hump, you're like, damn, bro, you could stand to lose 30 pounds, but this dude can hump up a mountain, no doubt.
Yeah.
So it's a different kind of training. So if you can run fast, that's great, but train for the mission you're going to. If you're going to an ODA who's fucking moving through mountains at altitude, then you fucking better be training with heavy weight on and humping and doing all that stuff you need to do. Train for what you're going into.
Yeah, because at altitude, you have large muscle mass that requires all the blood flow and everything like that. And now you're at higher altitude with less oxygen. a lot of those, get your ass kicked out there.
Yeah, it's no joke. So again, the best way to make a solid first impression: keep your mouth shut, look jacked, PT hard, fucking and hustle. Yeah. That's it.
Brian, how was it set up for you guys as PJ? Because so did you have a team? How many people were on the team? Because when you deployed solo. You were attached to somebody. How did that work administratively for guys?
Okay, so there were different ways of being deployed. This is another interesting fact. So like you can be deployed. Like when I was deployed to Afghanistan, I went with a rescue squadron. Okay. So we deployed as a team, and it was like, I don't know, we switched out with another team, and there was like, I don't know, 12 of us or something like that. And we were on the alert, doing the CSAR alert and the medevac alert and stuff like that. Now from there, you can also be deployed, ones, twos at a time, which again is much more common now. And then of course at the JSOC level, the Joint Special Operations Command level, those guys for many years have been, farmed out ones and twos to Dev Group, SEAL Team 6, CAG, and being attached with those. And that's gone on for a long time, especially with Dev Group.
Now, sorry, I forgot what I was going to ask. When you're part of a rescue squadron or when you're part of a team for the CSAR and stuff like that, are you going with a hatchet force? Is there a plan for you guys ever to go in by yourself, or is it always with a security force?
You go in. You go in by yourself. You're the first responders. Hopefully, the ideal situation, and this happened before. I was on a Chinook crash in 2007, and we're the first responders. There was a QRF of Rangers that were a ways out at some fob, but they were a ways out, and they had to go overland, and so it was going to take them a while, and it was also snowing. It was nighttime, shit like that. So you're the first responders. So when we dropped, I'll just use that mission as an example. So we're at a 2-ship. I was pissed because actually the C-130 was broke. We could have gotten a jump mission with the mustard stain because it was kind of a long flight, but the C-130 wasn't working, so we had to chop her in. So that was a bummer. But so we were in a 2-ship and we had 3 PJs on board each because it was a mass casualty incident. And so one ship landed. Couple of us got off, and then the other ship landed, they got off, and now we got the ships just circling because we're the only people on scene, and we're in Indian country at that point. You're in the middle of friggin' nowhere, bad guy country, and you're the only people there. So the QRF is coming, and ideally you always want a QRF to come secure any kind of site, but you're not guaranteed that, and you go that's like when the Benghazi thing happened. I still remember this, and one of the fucking moron generals said well, we don't send people into harm's way without knowing what's on the ground. That was the stupidest fucking thing I ever heard. That we do that all the time. You don't fucking wait until you go. If there's Americans, you fucking go. That's why you're there. Right. So it was very common. Yes, the norm was for us to be first on site, or if we were going to a place, and then you'd have if it was a big incident, you would have security come there. If it wasn't a big incident, if you were just landing and grabbing a dude, say it was an ODA that hit an IED or something, you had to just pick a guy up. Then you would just land, and the ODA already has security, so you're not worried about it.
That's interesting. I actually did not know that.
It's just not even a year ago in Alaska, PJs did that rescue mission where I think it was a free fall jump to go rescue a guy who got attacked by a bear.
Yeah, that was my very good friend. Good shout out to my very good friend Tony. A very good, and actually, Jack, he's a former Ranger, and he was the honor grad of our selection course. But he's a very good friend of mine. He's a longtime PJ now. He's fucking squared away. He's been in Alaska for 10 years. I can't tell you, the Alaska guys to me, that is the epitome of the real operator. Yeah. I mean, those guys are so impressive to me. Not only do they go and they're doing all the gunfighting shit in Afghanistan, right? But then they're coming back to Alaska and they're doing rescues under some of the most challenging conditions on planet Earth. And it's very technical. It's not just landing a helicopter. There ain't no place to land a helicopter sometimes. These guys will jump in and fucking have to hump out, and they're lowering litters down crevasses for 2 days, using very technical rope rescue. I mean, it's friggin' impressive. That to me is the real technical rescue, the epitome of what it is really to do the job.
That's hardcore, man.
That is.
Oh, it's not there. I mean, you're going to jump, you jump into one of the great regrets of my career was I did not get to do a trip to Alaska, because that's kind of part of the PJ rotation is you usually do a trip up to Alaska for a couple months. You might summit Denali. You get a lot of good climbing, you get a lot of good civilian rescue experience. And you're jumping at night, it could be like minus fucking 50. So it's no joke, and kudos to those guys. Those guys are locked on.
That's amazing. So when you graduated and went to, you said, where did you go? Where did you get stationed after you graduated?
So I was at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base in Tucson, Arizona.
Okay.
At the 306 Rescue Squadron, and it was a really great experience. It was, like I said, it was like just tons and tons of work. And that's all you did. You just trained. All I did was PT, drink, and fucking train all day long. That was all there was to do. And it was great. It was an awesome experience. And you're just getting signed off on all these tasks, and there's always something new to do. So they'll be like, okay, well, you're static line qualified. Are you jump master qualified yet? Do you have that? No? Okay, let's start working on that. Okay, you got your jump master qualification. Okay, do you have your night Halo jump master qualification? Okay, let's start working on that. You have your fucking rescue swimmer jumper qualification, and it's just one thing after another. You have your bundle qualification, you have your tandem qualification. It's just so much shit. Again, hard to keep up with all of it.
Right. The Air Force is not known for its military discipline. The Navy is not known for its military discipline. Why do you think the pararescue culture was so different than the SEAL culture? When you mentioned that they weren't recording their jumps, they've had other things going on. Why do you think it's so different?
Well, I couldn't really speak to it. That was one difference. I think they have some similarities though, as far as like the culture a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, like let's be honest here. Every guy who is in the military feels himself superior to non-military people, okay, in some way, shape, or form. And then if you were in a fucking combat MOS, your sense of superiority is even more inflated to other people. So like you're always gonna have that. So when you get done with all this badass training, you think you're a badass. And that's not so easy to come down from sometimes. And, I remember my old boss one time in Afghanistan, it's very much a bro culture sometimes, and you kind of forget about rank sometimes. But, and I had to be reminded of that a few times, mouthing off a little bit, as I am wont to do. I would, because you forget, you're talking to these guys who are your superiors, you're like, fucking E8, E9, and you're like, well, this is fucking bullshit. And they're like, hey, why don't you shut the fuck up? Like, oh, you're like, oh yeah, I'm in the military. So, but it's like that, you go, and it's a comradeship thing too. When you go through, you're doing like a night full equipment jump with, the E8 and the fucking 04, you're like comrades, right? But then when you get on the ground, you got to remember that there's a structure here, and it's not just Jim and Bob from the back of the C-130. Now it's Sir and Chief. So I think that's probably what it is. You're doing all these like life and death activities with these dudes who are your superiors, right? It's easy to fall into this like, well, we're all just bros, right? And sometimes they fucking check you, and they should check you, because sometimes you can be like you start mouthing off a little bit, and I did. Like any young airman, and they check you. They'll be like, hey, fucking, once you fucking shut the hell up, know your role. You just sit there and shut up. We'll fucking tell you what to do. I'm like, yep, roger that. I
forgot. So from your duty station, what was your first deployment?
My first and only deployment was to Afghanistan, Kandahar. I was lucky enough to get on there. I went to Kandahar in right at the end of 06, early 07. Spent like 4 months there. That was it. And it was pretty quiet. That was like when the surge was going on in Iraq. So there was not honestly a lot going on in Afghanistan at the time. I got a few good missions, a few mass casualty incidents. I was able to be attached to that ODA for about a week. that was cool. Did some hearts and minds stuff way out in the boonies. Traveled throughout. So I mean, I could say I was there. Did a few good missions, and then after that, I started getting banged up and kind of having some health problems. Like they thought I had glaucoma for like 3 months. That cost me my second deployment because you're doing your pre-deployment stuff, and they did that puff test. You guys remember the puff test on your eye?
Yeah,
where they fire that little puff of air at you. So they fucking did that as part of my pre-deployment spin-up for my second deployment, and they're like, oh, something's wrong here. So they ended up sending me to the military's, the Air Force's base, where they basically conduct every single eye test you can possibly imagine that the Air Force can put you through. It was like no shit, like a secret dungeon in San Antonio, and it was like this fucking 1960s laboratory. And they like hooked electrodes up to your head, and they're like, okay, now follow this light with your eyeballs. And they're like measuring your brainwave. I mean, every eye test that the U.S. military could do, I went through. And at the end of 2 days, they're like, fuck, we don't know what's wrong with you. You just have like really thick corneas or something. And but that alone cost me like a deployment, just like going through that. So I kind of like was a little bit of I had some jinxes going on with me in that sense.
Yeah. Brian, real quick, we're gonna get some questions.
Yeah, let's go through some of the questions from the viewers before we move on.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
And also, please subscribe to our channel.
Like, share, subscribe.
Hit the bell for notifications.
Flex.
Also, check out the links to Brian's podcast down in our down in the description. Okay.
And you can be jacked and tanned and juicy as fuck. Like Brian.
You gotta fucking get up. Come on, guys. Let's go. Let me get that in the frame there. Let's go. Jack? Oh, Jack. Shit, not bad, son. Dave, you gonna get it? No, Dave's gonna hold it off screen. Okay, that's all. We'll work on it, Dave.
No, Brian, I did an ancient Chinese fitness technique this afternoon called cardio. Have you ever heard of this?
No, it sounds horrific, and it sounds cowardly.
I had the full like Fila tracksuit on because it's late October in New York, fucking freezing out today. So yeah, I looked like a total boomer out there in the full tracksuit.
Bro, I can barely walk anymore, much less run. Are you kidding me? My ankles are just ground into dust at this point. I'm not even trying to be like, it's funny when you get older, there's a part of you that's always like, bro, I can still hang. I can still operate.
Yeah.
It's like, fuck, no, you can't at all. You can't at all, dude. I wouldn't last 5 minutes. But the spirit is willing. The spirit is willing. The flesh is weak.
Right. Okay, so Andrew, thank you. I, for one, feel Brian should be congratulated for all he has been able to accomplish, given all the extra chromosomes with which he was born.
I don't know whether to take that as a compliment or not. I feel like I do have extra chromosomes. I mean, I am 6'3", 200 pounds, twisted steel sex appeal. The fucking ab veins, you guys, right now. I'm not going to lift up my shirt, but it would probably be amazing if I did, because you could see like the ab veins are really like cutting in right now. So
it's okay. We won't get demonetized if you show the ab veins. I checked.
Wait until we get through these questions, because there might be one there. We know that a lot of people are here to support you.
Yeah, I know. I got all my haters coming in now. For sure.
As long as they're giving us money, they can hate you.
Hell yeah, brother.
John, thank you very much. I meant to post my earlier comment to this. Also, BK isn't real unless we see the ab veins.
It's funny, like I got a nice iTunes review a little while ago, and the guy was like, hey, I just started listening to your podcast, and I turned my girlfriend onto it, but she keeps asking, like, why does every iTunes review mention ab veins? at least once per podcast, I throw in something about how jacked I am. So, it's an image thing. And it sucks in a way, because I got to keep up that rep. Like, I've put that out that I'm like, all like buff, and now I'm like, fuck, man, I got to walk the walk now. I actually have to work out.
Brian, we're small business entrepreneurs. You got to self-promote.
That's right, baby. Hey,
it's what it is,
sex
man.
Sells, I got to get the haircut, the fucking grooming, the beard. I got to get it all, You got to, sex sells.
Well, if you ever want a haircut, come on in.
Yeah.
I've got
Dave will hook you up.
Dave, we need to work on what you got going. We got hair plugs, bro. Come on. There's no need to live like this.
Oh, man, I gave up a long time ago. I admire Jack's fight, though.
Yeah, I'm in the battle right now, man. I got the vitamins and all this shit.
Dude. You got the little widows going there, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's always been like that since I was like a teenager, but then the enemy started to advance inward in this direction. Yeah. It's like, whoa, I'm not ready for all this shit.
Yeah, hopefully, Jack, you can use some of your George Soros money to, you can plug up your hair with all that Soros money that you're getting.
Come on, George. Come on, man. Help a brother out.
And I can't, Dave.
I'm shilling as hard as I can here.
Dave, I was telling Jack before the live stream that I got many messages saying, "Ask Jack what happened to Soft Rep. What happened to Soft Rep?" And they ask me that all the time too.
Yeah, no one asks me.
Man, I don't.
They go to you. Well, okay, all right. Hold that thought. We got to get through the user questions here,
and then we'll hit the soft runs because this is going to be the first time Jack's actually spoke about it. Yeah. And John had another first live show, guys. Welcome, John. Thanks. Just for BK, he better get all worked up early, or I'm deleting from Twitter.
So that's another thing. I always have a tirade. Usually, it's something stupid that the media is doing. So on the podcast. And it's not like an act. Like, I genuinely get upset when I'm doing the podcast because it's a live performance, you guys. It's not live streamed, but I live record. I don't take any breaks. I don't edit. I take a lot of pride in that because I'm a solo show. Nobody else is doing what I do. And I genuinely get angry and get worked up when I'm doing the podcast. And people tell me that's the part they enjoy because I start flying off the handle about it's usually about the media and how terrible they are and how shitty they are at their jobs and how pathetic they are and how fucking conformist and weak they are. That's when I get all worked up, and people seem to like the tirades.
Well, we will give you an opportunity to tirade away before we close up tonight.
All right.
So your 89 Strauss, thank you. What exactly was combat weather, and why did it get tossed into a blender with other jobs?
I fucking so I do know I know the second part. The first part. It was, I never actually met a combat weather person, right? But they were at JSOC, and they were very highly trained guys. They went through jump school, dive school, everything else. They were attached to like CAG, Dev Group. What I do know happened was that their job was exactly what it sounded like. They had to know if they were on a mish, if they're going to get bad weather and stuff like that. So from what I understand, the satellite stuff has become so advanced now that there was really made their job kind of anachronistic and moot at this point. Like there was nothing that a guy on the ground could do that they couldn't do just from satellites.
Right.
So now they turned this into, they got rid of that career field and they transformed it into this, what's called special reconnaissance, which is one of the parts of Air Force Special Warfare, which is the new model that took over from INDOC, this whole special warfare model, which is made up of combat controllers, pararescue, and this special reconnaissance. Do I know what special reconnaissance does or what they're going to do? No, I do not. However, I will tell you, a guy, the rep, if you want to call it that, for special reconnaissance, does follow me on Instagram. So go ahead and look for him on my follower list, and I follow him as well. And so if you guys have questions on that, you can ping it. And also, I'll do them a favor and plug their shit. If you guys have specific career field related questions, I would hit up the One's Ready podcast. It's at One's Ready on Instagram. And they really do Q&As with guys who are actual instructors now, recruiters now, and they have all the detailed information. So instead of hitting me up, hit up those guys, because I've been out of the loop for a little while. I know a little bit. I don't know a lot.
That's good stuff to have all that information out there, because it used to be you and the recruiter was a high pressure sales position.
Yeah, and the recruiter, and when I was, and the recruiter when I went through was like an Air Force guy. He was not a special warfare recruiter. He was like a big blue Air Force recruiter. He didn't fucking know what PJs were. He barely knew anything. He just knew it was hard. That's all he could tell me. Like they didn't know shit about shit. Now it's much better. They have recruiters solely for special warfare.
Yeah. And back then, if the needs of the Air Force would have been, different, they would have told you, they're not taking PJs right now. We're only taking this.
Right, absolutely. And you'd end up being like a fucking guarding a gate at the security forces guy or something like that, which would be a sentence worse than death, in my opinion.
Come on, you could have been a raven.
Oh, fuck. Yeah. Don't go there, Dave.
Okay, I'll leave it alone. 89 Strauss, thanks again. Would you rather fight one Brock Lesnar size Frumentarius or 100 Frumentarius size Brock Lesnar's?
Oh, fuck, dude. So, Frumentarius, my man. I would rather fight one Brock Lesnar size Frumentarius because Frumentarius, our good buddy Jeff Butler, is a former Navy SEAL, former CIA operations officer. Jeff is the man. He's a very good friend of mine. We fight on Twitter all the time of our varying political beliefs. Good dude. I think I could fucking take him, though, even if he was Brock Lesnar's side, because my sheer hate would outweigh his fighting skill, I believe. I'm sticking with that.
Are you saying that you have a friend who has who has different political views than you? That's not allowed right now.
Yeah, I know. It's weird. We have... I'm glad you brought that up, Dave, because it's funny, and I know we're going to talk about the election in a little bit, but I would just say my secret to happiness and why I think people enjoy my podcast is I don't take any of this shit too seriously. Bro, in fucking 100 years, none of this shit right now, none of this fucking shit is going to matter at all in 100 years. It'll be a footnote in a history book.
Yeah.
But the way people get worked up about this, honestly, if you let politics come between yourself and family, if you're that obsessed, and Jack, you and I have talked a lot about the online radicalization, not just like, the QAnon, but the resistance radicalization. Mm-hmm. It's both sides. I mean, people have really been hurt by this.
Yeah.
So
psychologically damaged.
I've had friends who are like, and the media loves to focus on the right-wing kind of radicalization. They seldom focus on the resistance radicalization. And all these woke vets who I love crushing every week, my God, these guys, some of them are fucking deranged, dude.
Yeah.
Like, bro,
yeah, I know.
Unplug. Okay, your life is not that bad. America is not Chinese communist. We're not rounding people up and putting them in gulags. You have free speech for the most part. You have you know what I'm saying? We live in a pretty awesome society.
Right.
If you've ever been anywhere in the fucking world, the United States is still a pretty awesome place to live. You being born in America, you fucking hit the lottery right there. And most people, I wish, would just appreciate that and fucking just chill out, dude.
No, I'm 100% in agreement.
True story.
Through the history of mankind, this will be a blip.
Yeah.
Whether America's still a country in 200, 400, 600 years, who knows?
And what do I care? I'll be fucking gone.
Right.
What do I care?
Right.
Besides, America's doomed anyway. I've said it for years.
Ooh.
Thanks for that, Brian.
Hold that thought, because we want to come back to that. We need to get the question. Anthony, thank you. When does the BK workout guide drop?
I've been asked about that a lot. People ask me all the time. Listen, you guys, let me go back to this. First of all, it really depends what you're training for. Right now, I solely train to look good nude. That's my only fucking goal, okay? So if you're training to be like a special operator, or if you're training to be an elite athlete, your training is going to look completely different. Now, if you just want to look good on the beach without a shirt, I'm your fucking guy. And if you want to do that, especially in COVID times, for the gyms out here in California, you guys have been closed almost the whole time. I think now they're up to 10% capacity or something stupid like that, and they have to close like every half hour for cleaning. But I go to the military base to work out, or I did, and they're only allowing active duty guys who are stationed on that base to use the gym. So I haven't actually been in a gym since the lockdown started in March. So all I got is my yard, a couple kettlebells, and the Pacific Ocean. And that's all I fucking do.
Brian, I will subscribe to your YouTube channel for your kettlebell routines.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to lie, dude. I mean, I'm in my mid-40s now, Jack. I mean, fucking still, like, looking pretty jacked. You get yourself a couple kettlebells. You start, and you don't have to be like a kettlebell master or anything like that. Just get some heavy ones and pick them up and walk around for a while. You'll get fucking pretty big.
Yeah. So that's That's going to be your guy. You got to fluff it up if you're going to sell it.
Yeah, so you're saying it's coming. You're saying it's in the works.
Just get the arm check there. Yeah, it's looking good. Okay, all right, I'm on backwards. Okay, yeah, still looking beefy.
I don't think our viewers are going to be happy, and I don't think you as a PJ are going to be happy unless you can show your ab veins, since you can't do it on your own podcast.
This is like Dave's Freudian slip here. Like, oh, your viewers won't be happy, Brian, if you don't show your
It's not a slip. I spent 4 years in the Navy.
Dave, I'll send you nudes after the show. I promise. I got you, brother.
You heard it here first. That was. Do you have more questions? My question stopped. Said it couldn't connect.
Oh, really?
Yeah, okay. So the last one I got to was Anthony S. When does the BK? There've been a few after that.
Oh boy. Okay, I got Anthony. We're going down here. We're going down. We're going to go through them. Okay. High Value Warrior says, some fat body Big Daddy love for the seamstresses in the Air Force, throwing some loving shade.
I don't know what that means exactly.
Some love for the seamstresses. I'll buy it. Sure.
Well, okay. Well, actually, that just brings up a good point. Quick story. When we went to go graduate from PJ school, right? It was the first. This was like one of the few times we'd ever worn our blues, right? And my buddy, my prior Ranger buddy, who was my roommate, Aaron Finley, is awesome. He's a captain in the Army now. There's a PA, and he told me, he's like, bro, we got to fucking go to the tailor to get our shit. Like, and nobody else in our class did. And so they're all wearing these like boxy ass issued blues, right, from the military. And me and Aaron show up, dude, and our sleeves are all friggin' like, dialed in, like snugged up and stuff. And we're looking like, and all of our fucking classmates were like, what the hell? How come your guys' uniforms look so much better than ours? We're like, bro, you got to get your shit tailored. So you young guys, get those uniforms tailored. So seamstresses, yeah, you got to have that. You can't be looking with your sloppy ass blues at graduation. Come on now.
All right.
Because they issue you those shirts and these sleeves are like down to like your mid forearms. The short sleeves. I'm like, what the hell is this shit?
So you guys were looking like the Spanish Legion. You know those dudes who wear like the robin's egg blue uniforms and they're open chested like down to here.
I love it. Yeah, my brother got married and I went to his wedding and he's a Marine Corps officer, infantry officer, like I said. And so everybody there is a Marine Corps dress blues. And that was one of the few times I wore my blues outside ever. And so I went to this winery. And like all these dudes were, and there was still like a lot of females there at the bar, and then all these like stud Marines come in their dress blues and blah blah, and then there's me, with the maroon beret, and so these girls are like, oh, so what are you, and one of my brother's friends, he goes, yeah, that's our bus driver. So,
all right, so we got a Korean gent in here. I'm sorry that I can't read your name, brother, because it's in Korean. But he says, hi, I am the one who ended my duty of defense in Korea. One of my ancestors survived the Korean War with the help of the U.S. military. Thanks, bro. Man, we appreciate you.
Thanks for the donation. Yeah.
Appreciate
Brick
that.
Top Medic says, I went to SF Strategic Reconnaissance course with PJs. All had jolly green tats. They still do that and in the same place.
Yes, they do. Right on the ass. Should I show the ass tat? I will.
We'll get kicked off YouTube for that.
Or demonetized.
Really? That's too bad.
No, they'll kick us off for nudity.
Yeah.
Dude, you guys remember when YouTube was cool, like in like 2006?
I remember when the internet was cool. That's how old I am.
Crack and stuff.
Yeah. What's the deal? Can you tell us what the deal is with the jolly green footprints?
Yeah, so that kind of started. It became a tradition like Vietnam because the call sign was like Jolly, the Jolly Green Giants. So when they would call like medevac, CSAR support, fire support, they'd be like Jolly Green, and so they started calling the PJs Jolly Green Giants. And so they got the crazy idea to start getting the fucking green feet tattoos. And it was similar to the hang loose footprints at the time. Like the offset with the toes. Mm-hmm. And so they started getting those tattooed in green, and they got them on their butt cheeks because that's where the fucking jump master would slap your ass and say, go, out of the helicopter.
That's awesome.
or the bird, yeah. So they would be like, so they fucking, everybody got it. So it kind of became a tradition. And now, if you meet a PJ, the first thing you should do is be like, hey, let's see them green feet, boy. And, so if they don't have them, they're suspect.
I'm going to have to keep that in mind.
So you don't even do coin checks. You're way past that.
Oh, yeah. No, I don't do a coin check. And I don't carry a coin around with me anyway. So I'm not really, like, that high speed. So, honestly, it's weird. When you only... I don't know, so Jack, when I started writing for Soft Rep, it's like funny because people are like, well, we want you to write about PJ stuff. And I'm like, man, I didn't even feel really qualified because I feel like my career was so short. I always felt like that's why I rarely even talk about it on the podcast. I hardly ever reference my military career to begin with because compared to everybody else, I really don't feel like I did much, So I was there.
Yeah, but I know. I feel the same way sometimes too. And that's why probably we run a show where we have all these guys who are like OGs on, who can really kind of lend some insight. But everybody has their little part to play, has their little place in history. So it's
absolutely.
good to hear.
I was really proud of it, but we all can't. That's just the nature of the business, You all can't. I knew guys who fucking graduated and then 1 week later got fucked up and were medically retired, never even deployed. And I'm like, fuck, at least I got a deployment in,
Well, it's funny because last week we had Jason Bigley on, and and he said the same thing. I don't want to compare myself to other people because other people have done so much more than I have.
And I think everybody does that, even guys who have done tons of stuff. There's a certain, we're brought up to believe that, you don't toot your own horn, and there's always somebody who's cooler than you. That's for sure. No matter how high speed you are, there's always somebody cooler. So I just feel like, I always feel like I didn't do hardly anything, but, at least I was there.
I have a feeling that even a Congressional Medal of Honor winner would look at somebody with a mustard stain and go, oh, I don't have that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do. It's a
culture.
That's a fucking thing.
Yeah.
It's a culture and it's a cult, and not like you said, the last class was always a hard class.
Yeah.
This unit was always cool 6 months ago. Man, you got here just too late. 6 months ago was awesome. Dude. Now it sucks.
These new guys are soft as baby shit.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to the Groucho Marx quote. I would never want to be a member of a club that would have me as a member.
Yeah, 100%.
All right. So Mark C says, love you dudes. Keep up the awesomeness all the way from Cortez Island, British Columbia. Thank you, brother.
Awesome.
Ian, a young viewer, next level, is interested in trying out as a PJ having recently graduated high school. What advice would Brian offer?
I would say contact, again, the Ones Ready guys, and I would also say contact SOCOM Athlete on Instagram. SOCOM Athlete is a guy I know. He runs some of these training courses where he basically puts these kids through their paces, gives them a PT test, and we give them a little smoke session on the beach. And when he has classes all over the United States, and you can sign up for group chats and workout tips, and they do all that shit.
That's cool.
And I've been, and I've gone out to a few classes out here in San Diego. He would tell you that these classes he puts on in San Diego are some of his most challenging classes, and it's no fucking joke, dude. We've taken these kids out, and it'll be like me. There's a PJ. There's a PJ I was enlisted with who became a Navy SEAL officer, and myself, another PJ, a combat controller, a couple Rangers have taken these kids out onto the beach in January with logs. It's fucking sketchy, and put them in the ocean at night. I mean, dude, God forbid something happens to one of these kids.
And that water's cold.
But it's no joke, dude. Yeah. We hold them down and pin them down in the surf and yell at them and give them a real fucking experience, for about 3-4 hours. He calls them hell days. And I've had a few females come out for him. I've been there for two chicks who came out. And it's a great experience. It's something I wish had been around when I was young. It definitely gives you a taste of what it's like, and it's only a few hours long. But we give them a real taste of it, and it's no joke. I mean, it's. I tell them afterwards, you should feel proud just showing up to something like that because most people wouldn't even show up, and it's a nut roll.
I would add one thing to that, Ian. Tell them to sign a contract, even if it's delayed entry for 6 months or 8 months. Just sign a contract because I don't know how many kids I mentored who were gonna do it, and never did it. You can
good advice.
Sorry. you can train all day, and guys will train and feel like they're never ready or find an excuse why they can't go now. Sign a contract and then train with that date in mind.
Yeah, sometimes, and don't overthink it. I would say, like, I was talking about how ignorant I was. In a way, it was almost a blessing, though.
Right.
Because I really didn't fucking know.
Right.
So if you go in and you've read everything and you've gone to these courses and you've heard all these stories and you're just filled with dread, waiting for this and waiting for that, instead of just fucking completing that movement, whatever you're doing. You're always like living in dread. With me, I was like completely ignorant on what was coming, kind of, which was almost made it better because I could just concentrate on the moment and just sucking it up in the moment. Because if you start thinking, that's the best advice I can give anybody when you're actually in the course. Concentrate on just making it through that evolution, whatever you're doing, whether it's a set of push-ups, whether it's a run, whether it's anything. Just say, I'm just going to get through this evolution, and then I'll quit.
Yeah.
And then, but then you get to the next one. You're like, okay, I'll do this run, then I'll quit. But you just keep going. But if you start thinking like shit that's coming down 7 weeks down the line, you're just gonna fucking mentally just kill yourself. Mm-hmm. You just gotta stay in the moment.
Bricktop Medic, he says, show the tattoo, double dog dare ya, bark. I gotta shut this one down before it gets out of control. The powers that be, will come down hard on us over that one.
So I'll just throw up the angel tattoo as a consolation prize, and since I
think
can't
Brian would agree though to post the tattoo on Twitter.
Oh yeah, that's a good thing.
I'll like a close up where we can't tell it's the ass. Yeah,
it'll just be this big mound of white flesh. By the way, ass tattoos hurt.
Really?
I thought it would not hurt very much because it would be like fleshy. No, it's very painful because there's like a lot of nerve endings back there, man. It hurt like fucking hell.
I just figure it's like, when, damn well, Brian, when we have team vaccination day and we all take turns grabbing a big handful of ass cheek and you just throw the syringe like it's a dart.
Yeah, it's not fun. I don't like tattoos. I want to actually get a few more, but I'm not a fan of the pain. I mean, the one on my arm, that bicep one hurt like a biatch, dude. I'm not going to lie. I was like ready to tap out on that thing. Not fun.
That's why you get all your tattoos overseas, so you can drink.
Well, I was drinking. We were drinking. I was in the Hell's Angel fucking tattoo parlor out here in San Diego, so they didn't care. They thought I was there with my bro. We were both getting the rescue, and he knew we were PJs, so he was like, yeah, do whatever you want.
Brad says, do PJs attached to JSOC units have to go through an additional assessment and selection process?
Yes, good question. They do. They do, similar to like I wouldn't compare. You know how CAG does theirs? They have a selection to get into Delta. The 40-mile long walk, of course. It's basically there's a selection process like that. Yeah. So usually it's good to go to a unit, you have some squared away older people, get some experience, and then you go to JSOC and assess. But you better have your shit dialed in, and you better be ready to go. Because yes, you will be. I don't know how NSW does it exactly. I've heard conflicting stories. My SEAL buddy has told me that with NSW, like to go to DevGru, as long as you're like not known as a shitbag, you're basically in if you want to go there. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what he told me at the time. But with the 24th, which is the JSOC component of the Air Force, you have to actually be assessed. And yes, guys do go there and not get assessed to go to the 24th. And this 24th is now Special Operations Wing. It's not the Special Operations Group anymore. It's a wing, which is a bigger thing.
So Matt asks, who is Brandon Webb's favorite person, and why is it Brandon Webb? I heard all the stories, and I'm not going to get into like back because honestly, I only met the guy like once personally. No, that's not true. I met him twice. I met him once when he asked me to write for Soft Rep, which I did, and then the second time I met him was at SHOT Show in Vegas, and he was so drunk he walked up to me and I said hi. He looked at me and was like, "Hey, good to see you," and then he kept walking. Like he had no fucking clue who I was, which was pretty funny.
Soft rep was cool. I didn't have, I was kind of like contracting at the time, so I wasn't involved in all the like the machinations of the politics. Jack, I know you had a whole thing with it, but it was cool because I went and said, hey, let me try this weekly news column, and that's kind of where the idea for the podcast took off, because I was writing the weekly news column. It was pretty popular, and then from there, Jack, as you well know, at one point they said, hey, we can't pay you guys for a while. And I was like, okay, well, let me know when you can pay me and I'll keep writing. And that's when I stopped doing it. And then after that, the whole thing kind of fucking imploded, which is really too bad, because we really had a good crew there. Between you and Frumentarius and Derek and all the other guys, we had like legit special operators, there. And it was like a legit crew. And the whole thing went to shit. It was kind of a bummer.
I was really proud of what we were doing there for quite a while, and I think, absolutely. I had recruited, not to pat myself on the back too much here, but I mean, I think we had a really good group of guys there. We had some SF guys, we had some Rangers, we had you, we had PJ, we had some SEALs, we had some CIA people there. I brought in like Aussie commandos. Foreign Special Operations Units, all these different people, guys from the Aussie SAS, guys from the Danish Special Forces in their writing. And it was just really exciting that for the first time, at the time, no one else was doing this. And for the first time, all these guys kind of had a platform and had a voice that they hadn't had before.
Yep. Yeah, it was a great thing, and I will say that I never, while they were paying me, it was straight up. It was like I got paid to write, which is hard enough to do on the internet. Jack, you and I have talked about that offline, about how challenges of making money in writing on the internet. It's hard, So it's just, even though it was like it wasn't that much, but it was a decent amount of money, and I was happy to get it.
So what are the questions that your friends wanted to ask me about, like, what happened with the company? What do they got for me? And I'll try to answer.
Well, I think just generally they were like, what happened? Like, because I think really, I don't know if you've addressed it in past live streams or really talked about it before. And I'm not saying go into the whole long fucking saga or anything. But they were wondering, like, what happened with you? And I know there's like maybe some legal things and reasons you can't get into or anything. But
no, there's no legal thing stopping me. Because I refuse to sign any paperwork or anything like that. I just wouldn't do it. And it is a saga. You could fill up like a whole book about it. I guess what I'll say is, I co-founded the website, and as I was just saying, put a lot of work into it, put it all together. I was really proud of the work we were doing. And without getting into the Encyclopedia Britannica version of what happened over the course of like 8 years, various business decisions were made or were not made, and what I had to deal with was these periods where I was being told I had to essentially fire our entire staff. So I would build the company up, or at least build our staff up on the news side and have everything like a really good place, and then be told, hey, we can't pay these guys anymore, the budget is out of whack, everything. There was always some sort of weird excuse, so we had to like let everyone go. And this happened like maybe 6 times while I was at the company, where we basically fired just about everybody. And then, hey, look, Jack, I need you to put together, a good staff of writers and some really kick-ass freelancers. And it's like, hey, dude, like, that's what I had. And you made me fire everybody. And so we went through those ups and downs for years, where I was then building everything back up again, trying to bring in good talent and get everything, going in a positive direction again. And then being told, hey, look, we got to cut back. This is costing too much money. Everyone's fired. I went on vacation. I think the final, as we really entered the final descent, was when I went on vacation in Nepal for 2 weeks. So it was one of these times where I was totally off the grid. I was backpacking in Nepal, and when I came back, like, it was chaos. Like, everyone had been fired. Some people quit, some people were fired, but basically like a chaos frag had gone off just while I was away for a couple weeks. And there was like almost no company to return to. It was just like, how did this happen? Like, how do you?
And it rang hollow. I remember reading because everybody wanted, and I didn't get into it because I'm still contracting. I'm overseas. I don't know shit about what's going on, but. I remember ringing hollow to me when they're like, well, we got to cut back expenses. And I'm like, but bro, you fucking just bought your second airplane, and you don't have the best rep anyway. I had Navy contractors coming up to me all the time wanting to know what's up with Brandon Webb. And I'm like, I fucking don't know the guy. I can't even tell you, but
I mean, there's so much out there, that I'm just probably not going to get into. I prefer to stick to what I experienced firsthand, what I can speak to, that I experienced myself. But what I'll say is I stuck with the company through thick and thin because I was the co-founder, and I had a very emotional attachment to the company. Like that news website was like my little baby. I had built it up and nurtured it, and so I had an emotional investment in it. I'll just be totally honest with you. And that's why I stuck with it through thick and thin for so long. After coming back from Nepal, that real descent where things got really bad and they just continued to get worse and worse. The website was never really what it was after that final dive. And then what came was that, I mean, in addition to all the other turnovers in staff and personnel and everything else, I was kind of one of the one constant, I guess you could say. And I was then, after everyone was fired, including our podcast people, I was then asked to do my normal workload as editor-in-chief and also produce a bi-weekly podcast. And I said, okay, but you have to pay me for that. And I even told them I had this studio already built out. And I said, hey, I can start recording tomorrow, ready to go. Like turnkey, just pay me $100 an episode or whatever the hell it's going to be. I said, no, we're not. You're going to do more work for less pay. And I should mention, my pay at this point, my pay had already been cut by $30,000 that year. So I'm already struggling. I'm treading water.
And you're in NYC too.
Mm-hmm. And now you're asking me to do double the work for much less money than I was making just last year. So I said, look, you got to pay me to produce this podcast, and I'll do it. Okay. And the answer that came back was, no. You can either produce a podcast or you can double the amount that you're writing every week. And I said, I'm not going to do that. And then they came back, and it was Nick, because they like to go through proxies. Nobody can be a man and just grab their balls and just say, this is the deal. So they had Nick come to me and say, look, Jack, you do what you're being told to do, or you take your 2-week notice. And I said, I'll take my 2-week notice. Later. Oh my God, I'm shocked. I can't believe you. What do you mean you're shocked? Why would I not do this? You're flaying me alive here. Of course I'm leaving.
Yeah, and that's a good point for all these young aspiring journalists. I'm way past the point for working for free, dude. I'm just not going to do it.
Yep. I'll say I was sleeping on Jack's couch at this point in time.
I
moving out of I moved out of my apartment. I was going to move to Jersey City, and that fell through, and I had a motorcycle accident. And Jack's like, hey, just crash here for a while until you figure out what you want to do. I'm like, okay, cool. So I was at your place for 3 months?
Longer, I think.
4, 5, something like that. A few months. And
damn.
I will say that Jack was a complete gentleman because I was egging him on. I'm a bitch. I will I will look to undermine, go through every legal resource, everything else like that. And Jack was very stand up about all of it. It's like
there was a bunch of other stuff where I was given legally non-binding bullshit paperwork, so I got fucked out of a lot of money and stuff like that. I mean, it was bad.
Right.
Yeah.
Is that still ongoing? That legal shit, or has that been settled?
Technically, it could be. It could go to court at some point in the future because I have signed paperwork. But when I had a lawyer review it, they're like, this is basically bullshit paperwork. Like this, it doesn't necessarily mean a whole hell of a lot. So yeah, technically it could go to court at some point, but I mean, I understand that I got fucked.
Right.
You know, I got taken advantage of, and I mean, I guess that's how it works in some areas of business that you just find.
Yeah, and it goes back, Jack, to like, this is what I'm talking about with this business model of modern journalism, you know, and how hard it is to fucking make money doing something that people can get for free. So when I started, like, just for my own story, like, so I did the podcast for a year. I was still contracting. I started the podcast, and I did it for a year before I decided, okay, I think I'm kind of getting an audience here. I think I'm going to try Patreon. So, you know, I'd heard about Patreon. I was like, well, that sounds like a pretty good deal. Again, I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know the statistics, which is good. Again, ignorance is bliss, right? So I started the Patreon, and I've been on Patreon now for almost 3 years exactly. And Patreon is, I like Patreon. I know a lot of people have a grudge against Patreon for various political biases or whatever, but, you know, I tried to just not do anything to get me banned from it. But it is kind of disconcerting knowing that if Patreon chose to, you know, they could like kick me off their platform at any time, and then I'd be screwed. But Patreon to me is good. But it's difficult. It's a fucking grind. It's funny. I don't know if you guys have the same thing on your Patreon graph. Every month. So if you look at like a 6-month chart of my Patreon donors or patrons, it's almost like this sawtooth pattern, right?
Yes.
At the first of every month, I drop like, you know, 20 people, you know, whose credit cards get declined or for whatever reason. So it's a sawtooth pattern going up, 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 like down. And it's a grind, you know, for sure. And then you say something that just pisses one person off, and they're out. You know, people. Yeah. It's tough times right now. People are losing their jobs, so they, you know, cancel.
Sure.
But Patreon for me, I feel really lucky because from what I hear statistically, like from what I hear, I'm making more on there than like, you know, 95% of the people on that site. And I'm making, and I'll just be straight up. I'm very honest with my listeners. I just hit. I'm a little shy of my cut being $2,100 a month, which is fucking amazing, you know, for a solo show. And I don't really do a lot of, but I like the page that way. I don't have to do any advertising. Mm-hmm. If I plug a product on Patreon, if I plug a product on the podcast, it's always something I use personally. And let me segue into that. If you guys aren't fucking support your local veterans businesses, you know, we all talk this big talk about like, you know, supporting the troops and everything. I try to go on Instagram and I try to buy products from like, you know, veterans and t-shirts. I buy their t-shirts, and it's not because I'm like trying to like be some, you know, lame old veteran. I'm trying to support guys trying to make a living out there, and it's not fucking easy. So whether it's like, you know, they're making hair product or a t-shirt or you know, a supplement or something like that, I'll take it and I'll plug it on the show, and I don't ask for any compensation because this is something I'm really using. So if you want to support, you know, the best way to support my podcast, go on patreon.com, look for BK Actual. Probably the best way to support your guys' podcast, go on Patreon, look for the Team House. That's the way to do it. Put your money where your mouth is, people, because especially now, in this fucking era of propaganda, journalism is a fucking joke, and fake news propaganda. It's so hard to separate yourself from the pack. And if you want to support people who are being a little bit different, then support them. And, you know, we're talking like if it's $1 a month, that's awesome. You know, that's all I ever ask for.
Yeah. And Jack and I were talking about this earlier, just the idea that when you say fake news, like it's something that Trump kind of coined, but it's legitimate, and both on the left and the right. So much of it is just commentary now. And so little facts. And, you know, I follow people on the left, like left-leaning journalists, whose politics I completely disagree with, but who report factually. I follow right-leaning, you know, journalists, and they're all losing their grip or their place in that media conglomerate.
Yeah, and we have. There's a lot of reasons for it, but one of the reasons is it's a herd mentality. Modern journalism is very much a herd mentality. Look what's happening. So a lot of people ask me, they're like, "What do you do a little bit about my podcast, you guys. I started it because I thought there was like a real lack of international news, and I grew up listening to like NPR, and you'd hear those reports, right, of some like British chick, and she's like, today in Zimbabwe, the election for the first premier of, and you're like, what the fuck is going on over there? And so and that's how I was always fascinated with it, and I thought, I'm like, what, I'm going to talk about this. And so people are always like, well, why? Who do you use? What sources do you use? One of my primary sources is the New York Times, because regardless of what their nutty editorial pages are like, their straight reporting is very good. They do have a fact-checking process. I try to stick with facts. I correct myself if I ever get something wrong or is fake. I cover everything. A lot of it is, but a lot of it does turn out to be bullshit. And it just infuriates me at the media how much they manipulate shit. Where, the media, two things stand out in my head in the last 4 years of, like, one was the koi fish pond incident with Trump. You guys remember that? When he went to the Japanese premiere? He was right after he got elected. So Trump goes to Japan. And they do a ceremony where the Japanese premier, like, spoons this fish food into a koi pond. It's some ceremony, right? So what happened in reality was the Japanese premier did a few spoonfuls of this fish food, very solemn, right? And then he takes the bowl and he dumps the rest of it in the fish pond, right? So then Trump does the same thing. What the media did, though, was they edited the video to show the Japanese premier spooning the fish food out all like ceremoniously, and then they cut the video to show Trump, the orange man, dumping the food like a savage into the pond. And all the media was like, look at this orange man! Like, what a fucking animal, but it was blatant, like, manipulation. That one stands out a lot. And then the Brett Kavanaugh thing really stood out for me, too. The way they smeared that man as a serial teenage gang rapist, and they had fucking no qualms. People like Jake Tapper. I still have the clip. I played it on the podcast numerous times of Jake Tapper, tonight on CNN, a third accuser? And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me right now? And they don't care? Because
it's reality television.
And the media now, they really believe Trump is so evil that it's better they have to lose any objectivity. They cannot be objective because he is a significant source of evil in the country. And that's what they go after him for.
And I've made my thoughts about Trump very clear on the show and elsewhere over the years. But I think to speak to what you're trying to talk about right now is that what has happened in the left and also largely the media environment in general is they have let Donald Trump turn them into something that they would have hated previously.
Yeah. See, it's funny. You go, Jack. I mean, remember in like the Iraq War when a healthy skepticism of the intelligence community was all the fucking media ever talked about? And
dissent is the highest form of patriotism. I remember that.
Now you have all these ex-NSA fucking hacks who are on CNN as honored guests, guys who have lied to Congress. James Clapper from the National Security Agency, fucking John Brennan, CIA, who admitted he lied under oath to Congress. These are honored guests, and instead of having a healthy skepticism of any of these journalists now, they like hero worship these guys. And Jack, you and I have talked about this on Twitter, these resistance generals, these ex-generals, they get out of the military, and I don't know if it's because, they have nothing, they have no cause in life anymore, but they chase likes and retweets on Twitter, all these woke generals. It's fucking comedy gold to me, and I think part of that is, it must be hard to go from being a 4-star general to being just another old fucking line at the 7-Eleven who's taking too long at the cash register in front of me. You know what I mean? That's got to be a fucking hard transition. It was hard for me to transition from the military. Can you imagine being a 4-star?
That you had a huge staff around you and all the prestige.
Every time they walk in the room, they're calling the room to attention, and you're like, damn, I'm king shit. And now you're just another old fuck. And that's got to be tough. So what do? You go on Twitter and you get lots of likes talking about how much you hate the orange man. I mean, I get it.
Well, it's profitable too. There's got to be money involved, media appearances, whatnot. But when we're talking about the media and sort of disinformation or whatever, like I've been in a number of situations that the media misreported. I was in the jock for the Jessica Lynch raid. I was not on the raid. I was in the jock.
Yep.
And I remember you guys might not remember this, but there's a big story about it being a hoax and the troops going in with blank adapters. And it was reported, and it was reported on the left, and it was reported on the right. Like Bill O'Reilly, like when he was a media guy on Fox, reported. I'm like, where is this coming from?
Right.
You know, what is going on?
Well, it's like extortion 17, the same thing. You know, there's some big conspiracy about how, you know, oh, this is revenge for Bin Laden, and they, you know, they planned this and all this shit like that. It's like, dude, sometimes the simplest explanation most likely is the right explanation.
Well, it's
it's not some big conspiracy.
In the sense that whether, you know, there are the right-wing conspiracy theorists and the left-wing conspiracy theorists, and they each have their own generals and admirals that they can go to tell them exactly what they want to fucking hear.
Right. 100%. You know what? I covered, I remember when the Russia collusion thing was going on, right? I covered it sporadically, but it's impossible. I'm not going to keep up with the day-to-day machinations of the resistance fucking collusion conspiracy theory. It's impossible, right? You talk about Paul Manafort, and did he go to Hungary, and the passport. It's too much. I'm
and
like,
the colored
when
yarn.
something happens, when something happens, I'll cover it. And it's the same thing with like the Hunter Biden hard drive or whatever. I mentioned it because it's in the news. I don't fucking know if it's real. Rudy Giuliani's a nut. You know, I don't know what's real and what's not. I mean, Hunter Biden obviously was born on third base, thinking he hit a triple. I'm sure there's a lot of corruption there, but I don't fucking know. So
it's like I compare it to the Steele dossier.
Well,
exact same thing.
So there are two things there. There is the dossier that NBC came out with, but I don't know where that originated from because it was false. The emails from the Biden hard drive have been proven true, like by some really smart. I can send you guys the links, but by this really smart guy. But the way they're going after Hunt, like I just saw a tweet about Hunter, and that there's a video of him with a prostitute watching this disgusting porn. It's like,
I've seen it.
That's almost every Joe in the military, except they didn't record it. So
it goes back to your sense of skepticism. You know, how much of this is real, how much of it is fake, and then of course we're coming right up to an election next week, and all of this stuff gets dumped. You know, the same thing with the Steele dossier. It's like it's obvious what you're doing here. You know, I get it.
Go ahead. Sorry, BK.
I would think, you know, it's interesting with all the Hunter Biden stuff again and the Russia's collusion stuff. Again, you have to approach with some skepticism. Right. But even today, Dave, to your point with the hard drive, I saw a tweet from a Washington Post journalist today that said they had requested to see this hard drive in person, and nobody has gotten back to them. So, you know,
NBC also,
right. Show me some proof or whatever. And even so, what's the big scandal? It's not even really that big to me. It's not even really that big of a scandal. The bigger scandal to me was how the media and Twitter and social media suppressed the story. That made it way more of a bigger story to me. Right. If they would just come out and let the story, it probably would have been over and done with by now. Because Hunter Biden, he used his name to try to get rich. No fucking shit. Right. So does every politician's kid. You know. So do the Trump kids, you know? That's not the story. The story is really how Twitter fucking locked the New York Post out of their account for trying to tweet this out when it was, by all accounts, perhaps a factual story. Right. And that's something I don't think we've even grappled with. You know, yes, hey, alert, newsflash to all the dummies out there. Yes, I know First Amendment has to do with only the U.S. government suppressing your speech. But we live in an age now where a very few media companies control the flow of information. So it is going to become an issue when some fucking unelected Silicon Valley fact checker who's like 22 years old decides what I can and can't say on a medium that is really the only way to disseminate information in 2020. I know it's not a government entity, but you know, we already had court cases. I'm fascinated by this. You guys know the court already ruled that Trump couldn't block people from his Twitter account, right? Right.
It was the New York Circuit Court.
Right, and that sounds to me, being a big dummy, you just created a right for me to have a Twitter account.
Right.
Did you not? Because you can go on Twitter and look at Trump's tweets, but that wasn't good enough. They said you have to let them interact with you. You have to let them comment. So ergo, you're creating this new right of people to not only read his tweets but interact with his tweets. So by that logic, how can Twitter even ban me from their platform if you've created this right that I have a right to interact with the president on this platform? You know what I'm saying? It doesn't really make any sense.
And Jack and I have had this discussion because it's a business. We're a capitalist society. They have a right to do whatever they want, but also so does AT&T. Could AT&T deny me phone service because of my political leanings?
Internet service. Could they deny? Could Cox Cable deny me internet because they think my podcast is hateful? Why not? What makes that different than the phone company?
Right.
It's not. It's very. I don't think we've even started to grapple with this, and I'm tired of hearing people just sneeringly say like, "Well, they're a private company; they can do whatever they want."
Right.
Well, first of all, yeah, they're a private company, but they also have like the only platform, and they have like patents and stuff. You can't just build another Twitter. They have like intellectual property that you can't just build another Twitter. They have patents that you can't just mimic their shit.
Right.
And Twitter is still the best thing. I use Twitter for breaking news. It's still by far the best thing for breaking news. And so what do you do when a company with the only breaking news media decides, oh, well, we're going to arbitrarily kick people off our platform. We're going to arbitrarily label false information. We're going to keep up some false information. They have no problem labeling Trump's tweets, right, about the election. But you're free to, talk all kinds of shit about crazy golden showers and Moscow prostitutes and everything else, and that's fine. Even if you're in the media, they won't label any of that. It's so fucking hit and miss. There's no rhyme or reason to it. And you know what? Dave, to what you said, I'm very much a capitalist. That's what made America great, right? We're all capitalists. Right. But there's a difference between being pro-capitalist and being pro-big business.
Right.
And all this fucking lockdown has destroyed. It's consolidating all of our capitalism into a very tiny few big businesses. And where's that going to lead? A lot of these businesses are not coming back. Amazon's fucking bigger than ever.
Yeah.
So I'm pro-capitalist too. I don't want to tell Jeff Bezos how much he can make, but at a certain point, if Amazon are we going to wait until Amazon supplants everything? Because that's where I'm at. I mean, I'll admit it. I fucking order everything online. You think I want to go to the fucking store and hang out with a bunch of animals? Hell no. I'm going to fucking sit here and order all my shit. I don't want to be around anybody ever.
Has Amazon stocked back up on toilet paper? Because I know that is a commodity these days.
I remember, I covered the corona. That's another great thing to bring up, Dave. The COVID thing. I covered that from the very beginning in January when it was just a little virus in China. And I remember talking about it. And I talked about it every week until now, all the way up to the present. So I've seen the ups and the downs and I said at the very beginning, this is going to be a cost-benefit analysis. Okay, what are the costs of shutting down? What are the benefits of shutting down? Well, we now know the costs, right? Collapse the global economy, collapse the stock market, put tens of millions of people out of work, destroy the U.S. budget and the budget deficit. And what are the benefits? Well, fucking guess what? Newsflash, old people get sick and die, dude. I'm sorry about that. That's a fucking fact of life. Nobody wants to say this out loud, you guys. In my opinion, this is a fucking big culling of the herd. You know what? In the best way, you don't want to get sick and die, you should probably fucking live jacked and tanned lifestyle. Take care of yourself. But we can't, now it seems like we're in a position where we're not going to do anything until nobody gets sick. Doesn't that sound absurd when you say it out loud? And yet that's where we are. You guys probably saw Gavin Newsom is being ridiculed, my governor, all over the country. His holiday, guidelines came out, and he's saying keep a mask on unless you take a bite and then put your mask on and chew with your mask on, stuff like that. Don't sing. Don't have more than 4 family members.
Well,
nobody's going to do any of this. This is all theater at this point.
It's sort of like we're choosing the worst option, which is the middle ground. Like we should have just had a lockdown for 1 or 2 months and gotten it over with. But instead, it's like we're just kind of dragging it out and having these wishy-washy policies, and each state doing their own thing. So the virus just kind of sloshes from one side of the country to the other.
I don't think
it's going to keep going.
Yeah, but I don't think
it's going to keep going.
Sorry about that. I don't think we would have gotten over it in 1 or 2 months. Like, the whole idea of the lockdown wasn't to get rid of the virus. It was to flatten the curve to not overwhelm ERs and hospitals.
Yes.
Unless they come with a cure or a vaccine, you can't stop it. You can keep everybody in lockdown, but you can't stop it.
Right, and again, what's the cost benefit? And now the World Health Organization is coming out and they're saying lockdowns are not the best policy. This is not the way to do it. So we're fucking stuck with this until we get a vaccine or something else. I don't know if you guys have been tested. I got tested. I was didn't have it. I'm pretty careful, and I've been clear from day one. You guys, I'm fine with the masks. I love the mask actually. Yeah. Because I can I love the anonymity of going out. I got the mask on. I got my sunglasses on, my hat. I could kick the shit out of somebody and not.
When you're wearing your rain jacket in the park and.
Yeah. Wear my flat bill. I'm looking all SoCal hood.
Have you been flying to Portland to burn down buildings?
Yeah, I'll fucking burn down a building. I don't give a fuck. But I like the masks. I'm kidding. It's YouTube. I'm fine with the masks. I'm fine with the social distancing. I'm fine with the hygiene. Indeed, if all of this that comes out of this is that we're better with hygiene and everything, that's great, right? I'm fine with all of that. But if the masks work, if the social distancing works, if everything else works, let's fucking get it going again. Let's open back up again. We can't live like this. Our kids are being tremendously damaged. Opiate uses that are all-time high. Teen suicides are at an all-time high. This is killing. I was listening to some childhood development experts. They're like, these are the formative years. Yeah. Your kids are not going to get these years back. And I, as somebody who has young nieces and nephews, this Zoom education thing, it's a fucking pipe dream. My sister has to literally sit next to my 7-year-old nephew who's filled with boy energy, who can barely sit still as it is in a classroom, and she's got to sit next to him and make him be at this thing, and he's not learning shit, dude. So again, cost-benefit analysis. Are some people going to get sick and die? Yes. Sadly, they will. That's fucking life, dude.
Well, I don't know what to tell you. Kids, especially, young kids, they have to socialize. Otherwise, they grow up and become Unabombers. They get weird.
And we're warping these kids, and they're not going to recover. You can't just, with children, you can't just turn them off and then turn it back on and hope you make up that lost ground. It doesn't fucking work that way. So I don't know. For these people who are like, yeah, but we can't take a chance. I'm like, you know what? If you fucking don't like it, then you stay home. Don't fucking lecture the rest of us who want to go out and live our life and take a little chance. I could step out on the curb and get hit by a fucking bus tomorrow. Right. That's the chance I'm going to take. We all die someday.
Right.
I don't know. I'm a bad dad. I let my daughter go on her Zoom class. I'm like, go do your Zoom thing and come back when you're done. And they're like doing the hybrid thing. So she's in school 1 or 2 days a week. So she said she wanted to go back to school. So I'm like, okay, you go back to school. You wear your mask. You do your thing.
It's good.
But it's tough on the kids.
And the thing is with the response, it's interesting to me. There's definitely lessons learned. Could we have done things differently? Absolutely. But the thing that cracks me up with Joe Biden on the campaign trail, and I said this because I did the debates, live commentary, did debate specials, and he kept saying he's like, well, I have a plan. He doesn't say anything he would be doing differently, and indeed, he would be doing nothing differently right now. In the beginning, maybe that wasn't true, but right now, at the beginning, nobody would have done anything differently. I don't care how woke of a president we had. No U.S. president is going to have 2 people dead from a Chinese virus and be like, that's it, guys, we're shutting down the U.S. economy. No U.S. president ever would have done that. It would have been too politically unfeasible. So for all these people now with hindsight 2020 saying well, we should have, it just was never going to happen.
But another president may have listened to their medical advisors rather than kind of trash them in a public setting.
Yeah, that is true. He's a big dumb oaf like that, for sure. But I grow weary of people talking about science when science is never settled, Jack. We don't fucking know. We didn't know anything about this shit when it started. We know far more now, which is why the mortality rates have gone down tremendously.
Right.
We have many more people testing positive, and that's a whole other question I have is about these tests. I mean, you saw the NFL players, some of them, they all test positive, then they all test negative. I mean, how many of these fucking tests are false positives anyway? Right. But we know way more about. So we have, with the rapid testing, we have tons of people getting tested. So naturally cases are going to go up, but our mortality rate is way down because we've gotten way better. We know the virus now and we're treating it a lot better.
Some of the numbers that are coming out now actually show that, the EU's mortality rate has been higher than ours. So, maybe we're not as bad off as we may have thought, despite the gnashing of teeth that has gone on.
Well,
it's a tough deal.
And like you say, Brian,
the nursing home thing was a big deal at the beginning. Yeah. I mean, that was a huge majority of our deaths.
Yeah.
Are these people who are old and sick, and you guys have probably heard the statistic. When a person goes into a nursing home, I think the average is they stay there for 4 months before they die. That was pre-COVID, So that's once you go to the nurse, that's the last stop. So once in California, in LA County at one point, the nursing home deaths were half of all the deaths. And it was a tremendous percentage of it. And these are almost all very elderly people with underlying conditions exacerbated by this virus. And yes, they died. But to translate that, I think our media has done a terrible disservice because all they do is these alarmist fucking headlines, you guys. They don't talk about mortality. When's the last time you saw a major media cable show start off by saying, hey, just be a reminder, this is a 99% survivable virus, which it is. Almost unheard of to death in young people.
Brian,
they never talk about that.
Something I wanted to float by you and Dave here on that note is the catastrophism in our culture, including in the media, is that everything is apocalyptic all the time.
Yes.
I'm old enough to remember ISIS back in 2015 and how they were going to sweep across the United States and install Sharia law in any town USA. Then we just moved on. We move on to the Boogaloos were a thing for 2 weeks, and Atomwaffen was a thing for 2 weeks, and then Antifa is a thing for a couple weeks, and it's just boom, 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 boom. It's one catastrophe after the next, and it never ends. And I think that our society, on a societal level, it's inducing mental illness in people. We're all losing our fucking minds.
Mm.
No, it is. It is. It's part of that, what I talked about earlier. It's that radicalization. People are becoming radicalized, and they can't, unplug. I don't even know if it's that, really. I don't really know how you combat it, because there is a big problem. People make these mountains out of molehills, QAnon, right? Let's take that for example. Because I remember, a couple weeks ago, every fucking major media outlet on Twitter, they were fucking going ballistic about QAnon.
And then forgot about it.
I'm like, motherfucker, we have city blocks in smoldering ruins in Minneapolis that will never come back. Maybe not for a decade. And you're talking about QAnon? Who is that? Some boomer fucking meme on Facebook? Yeah, it's silly. It's weird. But they're not fucking torching police stations either. So I think your priority now, I'm glad, I'm happy to talk about QAnon, which I didn't even know what the fuck that was until 2 weeks ago. I was like, what is, I still don't really understand it. I guess it's a person, in the deep state. He's a deep cover agent.
Sort of. It's complicated, man.
Yeah, it's sort of this.
But my point being is the media really fucking freaked out about QAnon while completely ignoring the billions of dollars in damage, the dozens of murders, the hundreds of businesses just in Los Angeles alone that were destroyed during the George Floyd protest riots, whatever you want to call them. They ignore all that to focus on QAnon. They ignore all that to focus on the Proud Boys. I mean, the fucking Proud Boys, what the fuck is that? 3 dozen dudes, in their mom's basement or whatever? And I'm supposed to be all super scared of them? And this Boogaloo thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting to me too. Because the media wants to shoehorn that into this whole right-wing thing. I'd be they're not, that's a wide swath of ideology, this Boogaloo thing.
Well, they want to pigeonhole it into white supremacy, which it really isn't.
No, it's not. It's a lot of them are it seems to me more a lot of these guys, the guys who were arrested for the Michigan thing, they were almost like anarchists.
Yeah.
Who were out there supporting the BLM protests.
Well,
and
some
it's
of
And they hate cops. So how is that right wing? Because if you think right wing, you think right. If you're going to stereotype a right wing person, usually right wingers like authority, law enforcement.
Brian, a lot of these groups like QAnon, Boogaloo, they defy normal political expectations as far as like bundling them into a political ideology. They're not a recognizable political ideology, but because that's the media environment and that's our social environment that we all grew up with, that's the frame of reference we have. And so we try to put each one of these groups into this bucket that we can understand.
100% right. And the media, Jack, is too stupid to really do any discerning analysis of it. Like you said, they want to put it into either pro-Trump or anti-Trump.
Right.
That's the only thing that matters. It's you're either in one of those two things. You can't possibly have any nuance in between the two. And I would say to like people who are into news, and I have my audience, I don't know about your guys' audience, I've seen the demographics. My audience skews very young, male. And I tell them, I'm like, you know what, Jack, I know you went to Columbia. I went to a fine social justice warrior, a liberal arts university out here. I had a great education, a fantastic education. I had to do a lot of reading, and I'm really glad I had that. I would say education is important. You really learn to like do critical thinking and have a healthy air of skepticism. And it is important to be exposed to these other groups and other cultures and go through all that. It's not, and you learn that shit is not that bad. But I would say, like, I really think we have a tremendous lack of education in this country. Almost everybody I meet is a complete fucking dumbass. Like, I can tell within 3 seconds of them talking, I'm like, okay, you're a fucking idiot, and I just write them off. I'm like, hey, I got an idea. How about you fucking read a book? Why don't you start with that? And not Harry Potter. But yeah,
that's a frustrating conversation, and it's the whole other side. Is I think that some of your critiques of the media are quite accurate. The further critique I would make is of the public, in that, I mean, like you said, we have an uneducated public in many ways, and they will tell you they want facts. But if you try to give them facts, they just like kind of glaze over, like that little bit of drool coming down here.
And I mean, and these media companies, I mean, they're in the business. It's a business, right? So they're going to put up what sells. What sells? Resistance conspiracy theory has been fucking unbelievable for CNN. They probably would have been bankrupt by now, right? So they're going to keep doing that. And so you're right. The public has it. I refuse to watch cable news. The only time I even get into the clips of it at all is when I see trending clips on Twitter. I don't have cable news. I mean, vote with your wallet. Again, people, vote with your fucking wallet. Cancel your fucking cable package if you hate CNN.
Yeah. Well,
100% agree.
Brian, you said that the media is too dumb to delve into the nuance, but really, it doesn't serve them to delve into the nuance, because this isn't a modern problem, right? Mankind has been tribalistic since the beginning. Like,
very much.
Doing the other thing. They're not like us. Gives us a sense of belonging. Gives us a sense of unity.
Someone pointed out to me one time that this thing that we have this idea about journalists and the media, that it's like this conspiratorial thing, that they're pitching the liberal agenda, they're forcing the gay agenda, or whatever the hell it is, Soros money, they're forcing it all on you. What's really happening in journalism is that they're just taking the path of least resistance to advance their careers. So they are covering the stories that are the most beneficial to them. It's the low-hanging fruit that they can go and chase after and put out there, do a nice quick turnaround, and will advance their career.
And I think there's tremendous peer pressure in the journalism industry too. These professional journalists, dude, nobody wants to be the Hillary's emails guys. They don't want to. So if something comes out bad about Joe Biden, they're not going to fucking cover that, because they don't want, especially before an election, they don't want to do that. And it's hard. It's like you said, Dave. It's very tribal. These kids in journalism schools, they're all very woke, and they're being trained from a young age that you don't just talk about certain things. And things like this, what we're doing, these long-form shows, we don't live in a society that values long-form anything.
Right.
Whether it's a long book to read, whether it's a long radio show, whether it's a long anything, whether it's a long TV show. We live in a society that values, the 30-second hot bit from CNN that can go viral on Twitter.
Right.
It takes time. That's why I like the podcast form that I have, because I can take my time and really explore a story and really go into the backstory of it and talk about the history of it. We don't have that on cable news.
No.
You get 2 minutes on a topic if you're lucky.
But that doesn't make them money. Like, look at the longest running series in history have probably been soap operas, right? General Hospital and The Guiding Light. Things that draw people in, and every episode there's a kidnapping or a betrayal or a murder or somebody dies and they come back. That's what humans crave. And modern media, especially with a 24-hour news cycle, has picked up on that, and
that's why Trump is the perfect president for this era, because he is that president. It's like, who's going to be the next Supreme Court justice? Tune in next episode to find out, Brian.
I was joking when we were doing the election, we were doing the debate specials. A commercial came up for the debate, and it was funny. It was like, tonight only, the last debate. Trump versus Biden.
Yeah.
Who's good? It's like, it's such a fucking sporting event, dude. It cracks me up. And even now with the election next week, right? It's like, it all comes down to this. It's like, fuck, man. That's just the culture now that we have. It's funny to me.
So, Brian, I mean, we're here. We're in the heat of the moment. I've had a couple drinks. Dave's had a couple drinks.
Yep.
We got an election coming up next week. What are your thoughts? What are your observations going into this thing next week?
Okay.
And are there any predictions that you would be so bold to make?
I am going to make a prediction because I feel like I have to. But okay, so I would say again that we are fortunate to live in the United States of America, greatest country on the planet. Not even fucking close. If you ever traveled internationally, you already know this. So it's not that bad. Again, I've told people on the podcast from day one, whether Trump wins next week or whether Biden wins next week, my life and your stupid life is not going to change at all. Right. Okay? Your shit it's not going to. So all these people who are like treating this like it's a life and death event, you got to deprogram, bro. Yeah. You're fucking getting sucked in. Your municipal and city council and mayoral elections matter a fucking hell of a lot more to your day-to-day life than whatever dumbass is the president. That's for sure. As far as Trump, okay, I did vote for Trump in 2016 because he was running against Hillary Clinton, who I loathed. And I predicted that Trump would lose in 2016.
So did I.
I have said multiple times that I think Joe Biden is going to win, but but just because I'm in a public forum, I'm going to lay it out there. I'm not going to bet against Trump again. I think he's going to fucking pull it out. So what the hell? I think Trump is going to win fairly. I think he's going to win Florida. I think he's going to win Pennsylvania. I think he's going to do he's not going to win California. I think he will get more votes, like raw number votes, than any Republican has ever gotten from California.
Really?
That's
because of the policies in California the last couple of years.
Yeah, you know what? He's been some of the things. He's obviously a giant oaf, but I don't mind that because my uncles were all East Coast, like oafish Newark guys. I grew up with that. Jack, you know the type of guy, the loud, fucking obnoxious. Hey, fuck you. You know that guy. Trump's that guy. So it didn't bother me.
He was born and raised in Queens.
Right, exactly. What do you fucking expect, right? Yeah. So one thing, I will say there are some things he should get some credit for. One of the things was the illegal immigration stuff. He, more than any president in my lifetime, actually pressured Mexico to stop fucking letting tens of thousands of Central American illegal immigrants up through their country on their way to the United States. And he finally waved the big stick, and they did stop. And I still remember when Trump said we're going to pressure Mexico, all the real experts were like, oh, this will never work. And I'm like, what the fuck good is it having the big stick if you don't wave it around every once in a while? And he did, and it worked. Illegal immigration dropped tremendously. So that was one thing he did good. We haven't really gone into too many stupid wars too much or increased troop levels in too many places, which is good, I think. The economy was good until COVID. But but the debt is horrible. Our deficit is higher than it's ever been. Nobody cares about debt anymore. I grew up my whole life, hearing good fiscal Republicans talking about the debt and the deficit. And it's like, I'm starting to wonder, maybe none of that shit matters. Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe we just print more money, and nothing will change. I don't know. I don't know the answer. I'm not sophisticated enough in financial policy. But I know that the debt, he's not like a conservative, right? We haven't cut shit. I mean, our federal debts and our deficits are higher than ever before. So to paint Trump as this crazed right winger isn't really accurate to me.
He was a lifelong New York liberal.
Yeah, he was. But people hate him for his personality, which is understable.
But he's not really a policy guy either. No. So it's like if you try to say
he's a figure. Trump clearly his favorite thing to do is go to the rallies, have rallies, and bag on the fake news. That's his favorite thing to do, obviously. And I got news for all the fucking resistance liberals. Regardless if he wins or loses, the rallies are going to continue. I can fucking guarantee you that. He's going to keep doing the rallies. So get used to it.
One thing that has been consistent about Trump, like from maybe the 70s or 80s when he started doing interviews, have been his positions on China, his like certain economic positions. I think that's how he approaches everything, is in economics. I think he would be a good, not minister, but secretary of something. I think that I don't have a major issue with Trump. Like you say, he's an oaf. If he got off Twitter, things would be drastically different for him.
They're going to miss him so much when he's gone, though. Fucking people. I mean, he's made people's careers. All these never Trump people, all these Lincoln the fucking woke vets, you guys on Twitter who have blown up completely. Right. They were schlubs. Nobody cared about them. They made their careers of this guy.
Oh, come on, Brian. Come on.
I mean, they were doing the same thing to Bush.
Bro, you know what? I'm not going to name any names, but some of these woke vets, bro. Holy fuck. Like, seriously, I want to tell them, I tweet Jack about a wide variety of topics. Some of these woke vets, I mean, it's like obsessive, dude. All they do is tweet about Trump all friggin' day long.
But it's clout.
How do you live like this? You're a grown man.
But it's clout. If you're a veteran and you're liberal or anti-Trump,
yes, 100%.
That is massive clout.
I used to joke with Jack about that. Hey, dude, we should, as a social experiment, we should set up a Twitter account where we pretend to be real woke combat vets or something. I guarantee you we'd have 10,000 followers in 2 weeks.
Brian, the male feminist that hates Trump. Yeah.
You see it all the time.
Yeah, dude.
It's like an anti-Second Amendment veteran. It doesn't matter what branch they served in, what field they served in. They could have been a cook. But if they're anti-2A and they say, oh, these are murder weapons for the military only.
I mean, I think mill Twitter in general is just outright bizarre. It's like a parallel dimension. And there are all these people who, I mean, their anti-Trump stuff is just kind of water off a duck's back as far as I'm concerned at this point. But it's they're kind of war against the United States military, and how they want to make war cute again is just the weirdest goddamn thing to me. And the only thing I can imagine is that it's because they were not like me and you, Brian. They were not like Dave. They were working in essentially a corporate setting in the U.S. military as an office job. So the notion of when engaged in ground combat and you're seeing the flies crawl across the dead guy's eyeball, they never had that kind of experience. And so when I'm hey, all of your, this bullshit where, you think the troops are going to wear unicorn t-shirts and they're going to be all woke and shit like that, you're selling the public a false bill of sale here. This is a load of bullshit. This is not what war is.
Right. And they want, and it's funny to me, they want these guys. They imagine, and mill Twitter, first of all, I don't click up on social media because I try to stay with mill Twitter is the worst out of all of them. Like you said, it's a bunch of fucking pogue legs who fucking never did shit. But like you said, it's they imagine, you think you're going to have a guy who goes from literally shooting fucking 3 dudes in the fucking face at point blank range, and he's going to turn around and have an attitude like he's in the Berkeley fucking faculty lounge? Yeah. It's just not reality. No. You can't create. You're gonna have to have some dudes doing dirty business.
Right.
You know, whether you like it or not. And we can talk all day long about, being an honorable soldier, war fighter, and kind of churching it up. At the end of the day, dude, you're fucking looking at brains spattered against the wall. You're looking at body parts and maggots and blood and shit. And like you said, people are like far removed. And our media doesn't really help because we seldom show those images.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
We don't really show the costs of the war.
When the reality is also that in a real shooting war, our country desperately needs those people. And that's something that the woke, mill Twitter world does not want to acknowledge. That guy you hate, that young man that you hate so fucking much because he tells dick jokes. This country desperately needs that person. And I'm not like, vet bro dude, like, you need me up on that wall. But at the same time, like, let's acknowledge that there's another side of the U.S. military that also has a role to fulfill. And furthermore, my point on this entire topic really is that if you're progressive, you're a progressive liberal, you should find a better venue for your politics than the U.S. military. Because you are asking the military to be the one thing that it cannot be, which is progressive.
Right.
The military by its nature is conservative. It's draconian.
Right, and every other institution in America is pretty progressive anyway. And at the end of the day, Jack, like you said, you're going to need these guys. If you want to have a woke military who's going to stay in Afghanistan because the mission is now to make sure that, young girls can go to school, well, fucking guess what? Eventually, you're going to have some young kid who probably tells off-color jokes fucking shooting some Taliban dudes in their head.
Right.
And you know what? And yeah, he and his friends probably tell racist jokes and use coarse language. Ooh, my heavens. It's fucking embarrassing. I'm like, bro, you're talking about like the infantry. Guys who are like stomping the guts out of dudes. And there's nothing more impressive than the American fighting man. Even now, as woke as we are, I'll take 5 fucking guys in the U.S. military over 100 Iraqis any fucking day.
Right.
Any day. Because you know what? They're going to fucking stand and fight. Then they're going to face the enemy, and it's going to be like there's no quit. I mean, we've had just the heroism that came out of the GWAT. The fact that there's only been, 18 medals of honor for the GWAT, it's a fucking disgrace.
And 2 of them, from one person, who was a PJ.
Who?
Chapman.
Oh, yeah, that's right, yeah, and it's there should be a lot more. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. Well,
and also I'm also fascinated with the difference between the veterans on IG and the veterans on Twitter.
Yeah,
because I've only been on IG for like 2 years. Because I was on Twitter for a long time. That was my only thing. So I got on IG like 2 years ago because I wanted to grow the podcast and get an audience. And the IG veteran meme accounts are great. I follow a lot of them. But they're anonymous though. They can talk a lot of shit. You and I and Dave. We're putting our names and faces out there, which is a whole other ball game, And so, I have people, talking shit to me, and I'm like, yeah, well, fucking, why don't you show your fucking face, you coward?
Yeah, exactly.
So talk all that shit behind that fake picture.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. So, do you have an opinion on Greenwald?
Glenn Greenwald?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I know Jack is not a fan of him. I don't know his whole backstory. What I do have an admiration for. I'm a big speech guy. To me, like the end of you gotta have like freedom of speech. I don't care if it's through. I don't care if it's Twitter or social media or the government or anything. Like the more speech to me is the better. The way to combat speech is to not kill it. It's to combat it with more speech.
Right.
So if he I don't know. I guess now he's saying he quit his job because they wouldn't publish what's considered a anti-Biden piece on him. I mean, so be it. I don't know. It's like I said. I hope he fucking starts his own thing, but it's hard to make money writing on the internet. It's hard.
Yeah, he's on Substack now.
I don't know how that works. I don't know if people make money on that or what.
I don't either. You don't care for him?
Greenwald?
Jack, you had a beef with him about the NSA thing, right, or something like that?
Did I really? I mean, I never had a beef with him in that regard, like a personal thing. I guess I have had an issue with. I straight up, I don't think that it was the right thing to do to release classified documents in the manner that they did. Had I came across a leak like that, would I report on it? Yeah. definitely. But would I just release shitloads of TSSCI documents onto the internet? No, I don't.
Okay, all right, Jack. Speaking in that same vein, I actually have another question for you that I got asked a couple things, and it was about the Niger video.
Oh yeah,
and all that shit that you caught for publishing that. Mm-hmm. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, these are the SF guys who were, of course, killed in that gunfight with the Al-Shabaab dudes in Niger. And the video was released, and you, Jack, you chose to put it on Soft Rep, and I actually agreed with that because, in my opinion, it's already fucking out there, So, maybe we should put it in some context and something. And so, I don't know, maybe you want to talk about what I know you got a lot of shit for that though.
Yeah, absolutely. I can definitely talk about it again. I've written about it. I've written articles about trying to address the issue. I've responded to people who ask me about it whenever they do. Wrote about it in my book. Talked about it from the Special Forces Association. Long story short, I don't know where specifically you want to go with it, but long story short, that the event itself happened. And then what happened was that some of the guys on that operation, some of the American Special Forces soldiers, were wearing helmet cams. At least one of them was wearing a helmet cam. So ISIS killed those service members. They came up there and they captured that person's helmet camera. And they took that footage and they turned it into one of those ISIS propaganda films that probably all you guys are familiar with, where they're playing the jihad music in the background and there's the black ISIS flag fluttering and all that kind of stuff.
If you're not familiar with them, don't look them up. Just know it's propaganda.
It's propaganda. And furthermore, what they did in that particular video was that they added their own soundtrack. So they added all these sounds of screams and cries to make it look like these Green Berets were essentially they're trying to portray them like they're crying like a bunch of fucking bitches. And that's what, but those were edits that they put into the video. They were not real.
And you made that clear when you published the video. I remember because you wrote an article about it, and that's why I think it was important to put it out there. We have to address this because you can't just let this lie, this fake news, this propaganda. You have to say it's propaganda, and and sometimes you have to show the propaganda. And here's what it is. It's no point in discussing it without showing it. I don't think, but it was tough. It was very tough to watch. I watched the video.
It's incredibly
it was very
tough.
Very tough.
And what happened was that some of the guys who worked for me, they came across the propaganda video. And it had not been found or widely viewed quite yet. It was on the verge of going viral in the next day or two, probably. And what we did was that we took the video and, to the best of our ability, we edited the propaganda out of it. So those cries and screams and the jihadi music, we kind of took that out of it. And the fluttering ISIS flag, and this was a big mistake we made, honestly. This is on us. We covered that up with a company logo, and that gave a really bad impression that we were trying to own this video footage. It was a bad decision that was made, and I'll take the heat for that. That was the wrong thing to do. It shouldn't have been done. But otherwise, editing the propaganda aspects out of it, and we also edited the gore out of it because you should, if you go looking for this footage, be warned, it's incredibly graphic. Even though we blurred out some of the gore, it's not light viewing, and most of you probably don't want to see it, and probably shouldn't see it.
The original video is very, very, very tough to watch.
And it's very personal. It's a helmet cam, so it's from the first person perspective. It's very intimate in a very disturbing way. So we edited it in the manner that I just described, and we published it. And we tried to explain what had happened and what this was and what it was not. And in my mind and in the minds of the other folks, I think we all thought that we were doing the right thing, that we were informing the public, that we were taking this video that was already out there, but we were showing it in the proper context, and we were not perpetuating enemy propaganda. That was not how the video was received, to say the least.
Right. Yeah, I remember people. I remember getting blown up about it. What the fuck's going on over there? What are you guys showing? And I'm like, dude, you know what? I don't know. It was a tough call either way.
Yeah.
Because if you don't show it, then you're not even. It's like the elephant in the room, right? I don't know. It was a tough call.
Other people were. I mean, it was going to go viral in the next maybe 24, 48 hours, regardless.
Right.
I think there are things that I would have done a little bit differently to work on the messaging and present it a little bit better. Maybe I would have presented stills from the video instead of showing the video in its entirety. But like you were saying about free speech and kind of airing these things out is the best policy. On the other hand, maybe putting it out there in that way and just showing people if they care to see that, if they care to see factual information, because there was a lot of propaganda and a lot of misinformation about what had happened that day. That video shows factual information, and because that video was released, the Pentagon had to go back and they had to start telling the families the truth about how some of their family members died.
That's right. And you know what, there's something to be said about, like I alluded to earlier, we're so far removed in our society these days from a violent war, that some of these young kids who have these romantic ideas maybe about being a Ranger or SEAL or PJ, it's like, this is fucking what can happen, dude. You could get overrun by a bunch of fucking guys shouting Allahu Akbar, and you could get killed. I mean, this is real. It's not all fucking cool guy, fucking beard pictures and everything else. There's death. I mean, imagine, and with the females in the military, I mean, God forbid we get a couple of video helmet cams of some females getting fucking ripped to shreds by a Taliban machine gun. How the fuck do you think that would go over with the American public?
Right.
Not well.
Well,
yeah.
And it's not just the kids idealizing the military, growing up playing video game stuff. There are so many people. We have hawks on the left and the right now, right? I mean, I remember when Iran shot down the drone, and all these liberals were criticizing Trump for not bombing Iran, and I'm like, when did the liberals become hawks? When did that happen? They're supposed to be the peaceniks. That's supposed to be the balance.
Dude, vote vets, that big activist group on Twitter, Vote Vets, very left-wing. Every day they tweet out, it's been 120 whatever days since reports of Russian bounties on our troops' heads. And it's like, A, what do you want us to do? Invade Russia? And B, that shit's been fucking... They asked the fucking commander of CENTCOM, the general in charge of Afghanistan, about this. And he's like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
Right.
The media has debunked it. That didn't keep Obama just the other day on a speech in Philly. He said, it's taken as gospel now. There are troops, there are bounties on our troops' heads. It's become conventional gospel in the resistance circles.
This is another one of those things, Brian, back to our conversation about the media. This is a legitimate gripe I have with the media and some of my colleagues out there, is that I feel that they take advantage of the public's ignorance in a certain type of reporting that is done, where they say the CIA has reports, that the CIA has a report that the Russians were putting bounties on American troops in Afghanistan.
Right.
Now, the CIA may very well have reports. That may be completely factual information.
Yes.
The CIA has reports on all kinds of batshit insane stuff. They have reports on UFOs. They have, name some insane thing. They have a report because a case officer or somebody, an intelligence officer, met with somebody somewhere, and they told them a whole line of bullshit, and they had to write it up in the cable traffic. This is what we talked about. So just the notion that they have a report means nothing.
Right, that's what I was trying to say on the podcast. I was like, dude, this could be like some fucking turd walks into the case officer. He's like, oh, my friend, great to see you. My brother's cousin's sister's husband tell me, man, give money for shoot American. Mm-hmm. And that's the whole fucking story. And now it's Russian bounties. But it all came from that one fucking thing, third hand. But the media takes and they're like, wow, this is actually totally true.
Yeah. And now if the Directorate of Intelligence, if the analysts in the CIA look at all this information and they assess it to be accurate, now you got a totally different story. But just the fact that you're saying there's a report somewhere, that doesn't really mean much of anything. It's the same with Hunter Biden's emails, and I've seen the reports this week. The FBI has an open investigation. And so the public sees that and they say, oh, the FBI's investigating? It must be true.
They're closing
the FBI's investigating all sorts of shit. That doesn't mean anything in of itself.
Yeah. It's again, but there's no. The media could easily say this,
and the public doesn't know better.
But they choose not to say any of this part. They choose not to context or frame it in any way. It drives me crazy.
Right. It's very frustrating.
And whether they don't understand how the human intelligence cycle works, or whether they do, and they're relying on civilians not knowing.
Some of them know
that sources. A lot of them that's how they make their living, being sources.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And they go into a case officer, and they get paid a lot of money for information. Right. No matter what that information is, they get paid. And they need to keep that going. And if they run dry, then they need to come up with something in order to keep that money coming.
Yeah, and the CIA overseas bases have big safes in the fucking in the skiffs filled with fucking banded $100 bills, millions of dollars. And they're fucking peeling it out, baby. That's right, peeling it out. And fucking when Ahmed down the road says, "Oh, I could make some money here. Oh, yeah, I got some shit for you." And he goes and tells the CIA guy. The CIA guy writes it down, and like you said, then the cable traffic goes into the black hole, or it doesn't.
And he has to write it up, or she has to write it up. They have to write it up. It's intel.
Yeah,
it's sent up
and it's not an insult. It's not an insult to the CIA people. I mean, I worked with many of them, and they're patriots, and some of those guys are fucking pipe hitters. My old boss was killed in action. As one of those guys, and they're fucking tip of the spear and all that. But they're at the mercy of what people are telling them, and you got to kind of the critical thinking here and healthy skepticism.
The politicization of intelligence. That's the problem.
Yeah, and it doesn't help when you have all these fucko ex-analysts who are now CIA contributors, CNN contributors, who are like, orange man bad, get me Twitter likes and followers, I got a book to sell.
Right.
I mean, it's the most fucking. The irony is, the people who hate Trump the most have benefited the most from his presidency.
Yeah, I agree.
Like all these journalists have become media. They've become celebrities. Jim Acosta became a fucking celebrity because of Trump.
Yeah.
Chris Cuomo is a celebrity because of Trump. That dopey fucking comedian, that chick who does she lip syncs along with Trump speeches, Sarah Cooper or whatever her name is. That's her only fucking act. She doesn't even tell jokes, but she's become super famous for that, and she hates him. And I'm like, the irony. The guy made your career, and you hate him. It cracks me up.
It's funny, though, because it's just a cycle. I remember when the Bush-Obama, were they running against each other, or had Bush done his I can't remember now. But anyway, I remember I was talking to a comedian, a stand-up, and he's like when Obama won, I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do now, because Bush was the deal. Bush was the act.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how it is.
Yeah, and they're going to try. And so if Joe Biden wins, that's funny. I've thought about that a lot. Like, if Joe Biden wins, they're going to try to keep up this hysteria a little bit, but it's going to be half-hearted. They're not, because Trump is he's a very villainous figure, and he enjoys it. You can tell he brings it on. He loves it. He thrives on it. He loves the fucking people who hate him. So Joe Biden's not going to be like that. Joe Biden is not Hillary Clinton either, who is also uniquely dislikable.
Right.
Joe Biden, he's filled with dementia. He probably doesn't even know where his pants are at any given moment. But he's not an unlikable dude. He's like George Bush that way. You would sit down and have a brewski with Joe Biden. I don't hate Joe Biden. How do you
feel about Kamala?
I dislike her far more than Joe Biden.
Yeah.
She's very much a phony. She's a big-time hypocrite. Got her start as a prosecutor, district attorney, who famously let many MS-13 guys out of prison, and who went on to commit horrible crimes and murders. And so I think she's a giant phony who will say or do whatever it takes to advance her political career. At least Joe Biden, to me, he's a pretty authentic guy, you know? He is what he is. Unfortunately, what he is an almost 80-year-old man who's rapidly slipping into dementia. Let's not fool ourselves. Let's fucking go back 10 years. Look at when he was running with Obama. Just look at how crisp he was in his speeches. You can just see it. And it's no shame in it. Father Time comes for us all, man. I've said it 100 times. There's no shame in it. It's almost like abuse to me that they trot this fucking poor bastard out. You know, they're like, Joe, you got to go out there again. And fucking on that note, by the way, I don't care if you hate Trump. He's doing like 15 fucking rallies in the next 3 days, dude. Yeah. I get pissed off if I have to walk to the store at this point in my life. Can you imagine being like 70-something years old and flying around and doing these rallies? I mean, he's either on some serious Adderall or something, man, because he's got that's crazy, his energy.
That's something that's been mysterious to me, because I remember when Reagan got elected, and the big joke was how he was almost 60 or something, and the comedians would talk about, oh, my grandfather is 60 and we don't even trust him with the remote control, let alone the nuclear button. And now all the front runners on the left and the right are...
Yeah, these boomers are going to hold on to power into their hundreds. It's never going
to They are the worst fucking generation, really. They really are. They are, and it is funny. I mean, 60 is the new 80 is the new 60.
Brian, I want to ask you to stay for the bonus segment if you can. I know I've already kept you for like an hour and a half.
Sure. Let me just check my. Okay, I'm looking good on battery power. I'm good there.
Okay,
guys.
Yeah, I'm good. Questions, but
all right, go pull them up real quick. And guys, in the meantime, please go check out Brian's podcast. Brian, what's the name of the podcast, and where can people find it?
Okay, guys, so it's World News with BK. You can find it on Spotify, iTunes, recently on iHeartRadio, also at the Google Store. At the very least, I talk, at the very least, even if you don't like all the political nonsense, you will learn a lot about what's going on around the world. We talk a lot about international conflict, international politics, international disasters, and I also play all the clips of people having meltdowns in the store over the masks, all the racial confrontation. I'm pretty proud of the fact that on any given week, you're going to hear a lot of racial slurs in my podcast, that's for sure, of people screaming at each other. So it's definitely an adult show. It's pretty unique, I feel. Again, I'm the only, I feel like it's one of the longest running veteran hosted podcasts out there. It's been almost 4 years now. Just about every week. I've barely missed a week, and it's unique, and I rarely have guests, and we go straight through, and however it comes out, and I try to have a good time. So check it out, and I don't take myself too seriously, and neither should you guys, so check it out.
A couple things. You always have great intro music.
Thank you very much. I'll probably get dinged on that someday for royalties, but fuck it, I'll just delete everything.
It is a great sampling of interesting news and important news around the world that in our one or two story media cycle, whether you're on the left or the right, it doesn't matter. You're not getting,
Right, and I always finish, if you've seen the teasers on Twitter or Instagram, I always like to finish with a horrific humanity story of the horrible things we do to ourselves. For example, last week was the man in the UK who was arrested for chicken necrophilia. Not just chicken fucking, mind you. He fucked the chickens to death. So as he was fucking them, they died, but he would still finish. So they had the necrophilia charges on top of that. And his wife went along with them and filmed it all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
His wife was into it.
They found each other. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
that's a perfect match. I mean, one in billions.
That is a very specific OkCupid questionnaire right there.
Yeah.
There's somebody out there for everybody, boys. Don't despair, kings.
For sure. And look, like Brian says, left or right, Trump wins, Biden wins. Your life's going to go on. The Constitution stands. It saves us from all this.
And I'm glad you said that, Dave. The important thing is the fucking Constitution. It's not whatever fucking dope happens to be the president. The most important amendment is the First Amendment. 100%. That's why they made it the First Amendment. Anybody who tries to fucking change that is an enemy of the United States Constitution in my eyes. And I don't care if it's a fucking nameless Silicon Valley oligarch or if it's Congress putting new limitations on what I can and can't say. Fuck you. I'm a grown-ass man. Don't tell me what to fucking say. I can use my critical thinking. I'm more educated than you. I'm more jacked than you. I'm more tan than you. I have better fucking hair than you.
Preach.
And I'll fucking put 2 in your head from 100 meters out if I have to. Don't tell me what to fucking say. That's not a threat, YouTube. That's just a general boastful attitude I have.
It's bro culture. Vet bro.
Brian, thanks so much for coming and hanging out with us tonight.
We have questions, but mine cut off. So
okay.
We need to go.
There are a couple more. Okay. Let's see here.
We'll do quick. I'll just do quick answers for you.
All right.
Keep going. Keep going. There are a few.
The stuff about soybeans. This is the beauty or the horror of doing it live. Is that we have these issues. That's as far back as I think these are the newer ones. The economy is good, but our goddamn soybean markets are gone. They're fucking gone, Brian. Brazil has drank our milkshake in this soybean trade.
Jeez.
I don't know what's
this is like what these are like all my IG followers fucking flooding your guys' YouTube channel right now.
What about the soybeans, BK? Andrew wants to know.
What's a soy? First of all, you shouldn't be eating soy. Soy is a fucking no-go. I mean, come on, guys. He's right. Come on now. Are you trying to emasculate yourself? Grow them titties? Fuck that.
What do you think a giraffe sells for on the open market, Ian asks?
It's got to be fucking $1 million, right?
No, not even close.
Yeah, it's like $36K you can get a giraffe.
Second hand.
What?
You want a giraffe, Brian? I'll get you a giraffe.
It's a used giraffe.
I got a guy. I'll get you a
giraffe, bro.
It's a used giraffe.
I would like a bear. I would like a bear. I've been saying that forever. I would like a pet bear. I've seen the videos from Russia where like dudes are like hanging out with bears. Very appealing to me.
What kind of bear?
They kind of cuddle with them. They're fucking the big ones. I want the fucking big ones, dude. The
like
monsters.
A Kodiak bear, yeah.
The ones that stand up and are like 8 feet tall.
All right, Brad here. Brad is going there. He says, "Would Sanders be a better pick to win the DNC?"
Well, no, because he's too. Bernie is he sounds everything. The thing is, socialism sounds so appealing, right? Don't worry about anything. We're gonna fucking take care of you. We're gonna give you everything you want. That's very comforting for a lot of people. I can see the appeal. I don't want to fucking live that way. You know,
Bernie promises shit he can't deliver on.
It's hard to get elected. This is why nobody talks about cutting spending, right? Nobody gets elected by talking about shit they're going to take away or how much they're going to leave you alone. People get elected when they tell you how much shit they're going to give you and how much you'll get for free. That's the nature of politics. It's kind of sad. I don't want anything. My political philosophy is free. I just want to be left the fuck alone and don't fuck me in the ass in taxes. Other than that, and don't tell me what to say.
Andrew says, no, Sanders would have been worse. And that's actually the end of our questions, man. So,
all right, great.
Damn, Brian, we went around the world on this podcast, man. And,
bro,
thank you, the 200 people who joined us tonight as well, watching live, and the many more people who will watch this in the coming days and weeks. Please like, share, subscribe to the YouTube channel and the podcast, and leave us a comment down in the description, or leave us a comment down below. And you can hit up the description. You'll find links to Brian's podcast and his Patreon. You will find links to our Patreon, our merch store. You can get Team House T-shirts and mugs and hoodie sweatshirts.
I'm working on merch, by the way, for fucking the many people who keep asking me about that. I'm working on it.
What are you working on? The design or?
Yeah, well, I have a design in mind. I've actually been working with the guy. I got a cool kind of design. I'm just going to do the hats and the T-shirts. I mean, if nothing else, you'll have a badass looking T-shirt, even if you don't like really listen to the podcast.
All right,
and again,
I'll get one and I'll represent.
Podcast. By the way, you guys, it drops. I record every Saturday. Usually pops up about Saturday afternoon. Again, Spotify, iTunes, World News with BK.
And Brian, two things real quick. What's your Twitter? If you want to follow you on Twitter.
Yeah, so I'm at Twitter at Bravo Kilo Actual. I'm active on there throughout the week, and my Instagram is at BK Actual. Please follow me on there.
Okay. And obviously people can drop into your show at the latest episode, but is there an episode? Do you have like an epic or something that you would recommend if people want to know what you're all about?
Well, you know what? I don't really look backwards too much, so I would say, because it's a topical show, right?
Sure.
Every week is different, and I'm just like normal, like everybody else, guys. Sometimes I'm, hungover. Sometimes I'm sad. Sometimes I'm not in the mood. But I show up every week and try to do a good job. And really, I take a lot of pride in doing a lot of prep, and I really give it my all every week. So again, you guys, if you want to support, your local veteran creatives, go to the Team House Patreon. Go to my Patreon. Kick in $1 a month. This is how vote with your wallet, people. Vote with your wallet, and I really try to give it my all. And I love getting. And by the way, you guys, I get tons of stories from listeners who DM me at BK Actual or Bravo Kilo Actual. I get a lot of stories that are off the beaten path that I'd never heard of, and thanks to my great listeners, they're the ones sending me this stuff. Yeah. So I love getting all your messages, and I also love getting the messages from all my guys and all over the world in the military and in law enforcement agencies, from Canada to Japan and everywhere in between. I really appreciate it.
Andrew said, tell Brian he can find a bear in certain bars.
Oh! Let me tell you something.
Damn. A subculture reference.
If I could pull chicks like I pull gay men, I would have no problems. Gay men fucking love me.
What?
Love me.
Is it North Hillside? North, like above Balboa Hospital?
Oh, Hillcrest.
Hillcrest.
Yes, Hillcrest is the homosexual section of town, which has great restaurants, and I enjoy going there very much. I get stared at quite a bit. They take a look. I mean, it's striking, you guys. 6'3", 200 pounds. The hair is just so coiffed to perfection.
Yeah.
I mean, the abs are popping, the shoulders, the double flex going up
there.
Yeah,
veins.
I mean, the whole thing is a good package. So,
do you get like the mesh T-shirts from International Mail to show your?
Oh yeah. I wear this medium fucking wife beater so I can show the shoulder veins coming across like that. It's pretty much the guys are soiling themselves right there.
No harm, no foul.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
it's all good stuff.
And we always knew that PJs were in competition with SEALs for best hair products, best accessories, and you're obviously winning the battle.
Yeah, I mean, and hey, it doesn't get any easier, gents. We got to fucking keep plucking, Don't stop grooming because you're getting older. I mean, my God, you guys, you older gents in your 40s, your fucking ear hair, gents, you got to trim the ear hair, for Christ's sakes. I go out with dudes to the bar, and I'm like, I'm not fucking going anywhere with you until you fucking clean up all that shit on your ears, bro. Come on, trim it up.
Why wouldn't you, though? Isn't the halo effect or whatever? It's when the guy
it's not good. No, I got to have a wingman. I got to have him looking smooth like me. I can't go in there with Jack's got fucking hair coming out of his nose and shit, his ears. And, I would have to pluck and groom Jack, for about an hour before we could go out in Manhattan.
I thought you wanted to go someplace with somebody significantly less attractive than you, though, because it elevates you.
I thought Manhattan. Isn't Manhattan filled with beautiful people? We got to get out there. I got to get out there.
L.A.
Big city.
Manhattan, everybody's just working themselves to death.
L.A. is another level. Like,
depends on the scene,
San Diego, dude, San Diego is nice, but you go to L.A., and you go to, like, Santa Monica, just, like, out to eat or something, and, every fucking waitress in the place is just drop dead gorgeous. You're like, wow. And they're like, serving you like coffee. It's another level in LA for sure, because they're all obviously trying to get into the business.
You're talking about before Santa Monica got burnt down, right?
Yeah, well, it's not that bad.
No.
But LA's great. I enjoy LA. I know a lot of people hate it.
All right, Brian, stick with us for a minute. Everyone, thank you so much again for joining us tonight. We will be back next week with Mark Pararescue, who is a veteran of the Central Intelligence Agency, served like 28 years, almost a 30-year career. So we're really looking forward to talking to him. And we will see you then. So thanks, everyone. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Thanks, brother. Thank you, Superman.
Okay. Stream's over. Brian, we'll go right into